Does everybody have the Zoom access for the executive session?
Yes.
I see Corey's a smart one. He's having dinner.
Well, Jack, I think we can open the meeting at this point. It says it's recording. I don't
Okay.
know if we need Tracy to do so.
I don't know either. But I will open the meeting, and I'd like to call this Cohasset Select Board meeting of Tuesday, July 12th, 2002 to order. Roll call, starting with Diane,
Diane Kennedy here.
Corey,
Corey Evans here.
Jean Healy DePold,
Jean Haley Dipple here.
Paul Grady,
All Grady here.
Jack Creighton here. Okay. Tonight's meeting will be conducted on the Zoom platform and live streamed on Cohasset 143 TV and Cohasset's Facebook page. The public is invited to participate on the Zoom platform, which can be accessed using the link provided at the top of the posted agenda for tonight's meeting, which is posted on the town website. Members of the board and other scheduled participants will be able to participate when called on by the chair. Board members will be able to ask questions of any participant. All votes taken at this meeting will be by roll call. Members of the public who wish to ask questions are asked to raise their virtual hands on Zoom, and at the discretion of the chair will be promoted into the meeting. Members must provide their full name and address for the public record. Please note that comments on platforms other than Zoom will not be monitored. This meeting is being recorded and will be available for later viewing on Cohasset 143. I want to start this meeting, as we customarily do, with the Pledge of Allegiance. We're now rotating that honor, and tonight I've asked Select Member Diane Kennedy to lead us in the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We're now going into executive session on exemption number 3, which is to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining or litigation. If an open meeting will have a detrimental effect on the bargaining or litigation of the public body, and the chair so declares, the chair so declares. The board will receive an update on the fire contract negotiation process. So we are going to temporarily adjourn this, this meeting, and we will reconvene at 7 o'clock on the same public Zoom. So, it's pausing this meeting, and we'll reconvene on public Zoom at 7 o'clock. See you on the, does everybody have the Zoom for the executive session?
Do we have to make a motion to enter it?
I don't think we have to, but if you're more comfortable, Corey, make a
We don't
motion.
have to, it's fine.
I think we can declare pause.
You need a motion to go into executive session, particularly on Zoom.
All right, okay. So, Chair,
I'll
will,
make the motion.
Second,
roll call to motion to go into executive session. Corey Evans,
Corey Evans, aye.
Diane Kennedy,
Diane Kennedy, aye.
Jean Healy DePold,
Jean Haley Dipple.
Paul Grady,
Paul Grady, aye.
Jack Creighton, aye. This is adjourned. We're going into executive session. Okay, we have everybody's here, but I don't know, is this being recorded?
Recorded and on Facebook.
All right. I don't think, do we really need reread the Zoom thing? I don't think we do. Hello, everybody. So I just want to reopen the Cohasset Select Board meetings of Tuesday, July 12th, 2022. We previously opened at 6:30 and then we went into executive session for exemption 3. We have finished that. And so we are reconvening, but now roll call of who is present. Jean,
Jean Haley Dipple here.
Diane,
Diane Kennedy here.
Paul,
Paul Grady, present.
Corey Evans.
Corey Evans here.
Okay, Jack Creighton, present. Okay. As usual, we start our public sessions with a public comment. Public comment is any to make any comment on any subject that's applicable to the governance of the town of Cohasset. Anything that, and you do have to identify with your name and address. Anything that's brought up will not be discussed. The board in its wisdom may decide to bring up the matter at a future select board meeting, but is there anybody there who'd like to speak publicly? Okay, hearing no one. Now, we are now going into a joint meeting with the advisory committee. And I see Rob Hillman. Rob, is your board convened?
No,
All
we
right.
will not be having a joint meeting. As I said to you in an email, I was surprised that you had scheduled an executive session in the meeting prior to a joint meeting with another board and asked that we start on time. I had a quorum at 7 o'clock.
All right,
I let them go because not only were we late, but I didn't get any indication when you would come out of executive. So we don't have a quorum. Now, fortunately, at Chris Senior's recommendation, we put some belts and suspenders on the issue of year-end transfers, and it is on our agenda for our meeting tomorrow. So presumably you will vote to approve, or perhaps not, the year-end transfers, and we'll undertake that so we can do it within the statutory timeline. But I have a lot of experience with executive session as the person with whom the executive session is conducted. And I mean, if you want to have one before one of your meetings, go right ahead. But before a joint meeting, please don't ever do this again.
okay. Well, I was aware of your email. Actually, at 7 o'clock, we were finishing up, and then there was a last minute suggestion of some importance and a breakthrough suggestion on a contentious issue. And that took but I was aware of that. And again, my apologies to you and to your board. So we will then proceed to go through of these and approve them. Do you want to remain on or just?
Demote me, so there's no notion that I'm part of this meeting, but I'll continue. I'll stay on to watch.
Okay. And again, my apologies to you and the board. I was watching the clock very carefully. And then as I told you, without going into great details, there was kind of a breakthrough suggestion right at about 5 minutes to go. But again, my apologies.
Thank you, Rob. Mark Magic here, member advisory, and signing off after waiting around for 40 minutes. So thanks, Rob. Have a good night, everyone.
Okay. Chris, do you want to go through the year-end transfers?
So I'm happy to have Don with us tonight to walk us through the transfers as he has done for 5 years. I think all of you have the sheet. If Tracy, if you can give Don sharing authority for his screen, he can pop it up on the screen and show everybody. So what happened in 5 years? This used to have to go to town meeting. 5 years ago, when the state updated, or maybe 6 years ago now, the state updated its processes. It allowed year-end budget transfers, which are really just moving between line items, to be done at the end of the year by the select board and the advisory committee or the finance committee. And it's made it a lot simpler. So and generally they revolve, as they do this year, around just a couple of key expense And just so everybody also is aware, so the one of them is transfer for personnel for merit increases and all. Those monies are stuck in the town manager's budget in a pool, and then they get dispersed. So people get the merit raises based on contracts and all during the year, and the money that gets transferred at the end of the year to balance it out. So there's a pre-existing process for that. Some of these other things, we move money around a little bit. So, but I will ask Don to walk us through if that's all right, Jack.
Okay, go ahead, Don.
All right, good evening. I'm going to share my screen now. Oh, I need access.
Should have it now.
Got it. All right, so is that big enough for people to see? Good. All right, so yeah, as Chris mentioned, Mass General Law allows us to do year-end transfers to cover any budgetary deficits in departments. We're essentially transferring funds from other departmental available funds as of June 30th and or the reserve fund. So I'm gonna go through the handful of items that we're transferring funds to, and then I'll cover where we're getting the funds from. We're doing $15,000 for the finance department. As Chris mentioned, some of these are salary adjustments that are budgeted in the town manager's budget. We also had a change in our assistant town accountant, or the assistant to the town accountant, and we retained our former assistant to help in the training process. In the treasurer collectors is a similar situation where salary adjustments, again, appropriated in the town manager's budget, but we also retain Linda to help train our new revenue collector. So that's what those two transfers relate to. Town council, you'll see this kind of varies every year. We've had a level funded budget of 150,000 since FY15. And legal services vary year to year. 140,000 is somewhat consistent with some of the other years. We also just had new counsel this year, I believe covering a various number of items that might not have occurred in the past. So the 140,000 will cover our current year deficit. Permits and inspections, we have 21,000. Again, relating mostly to salary adjustments. But if you remember at the beginning of the fiscal year, we had an interim conservation agent, and those funds came from the permits and inspections department instead of the revolving fund. So this is covering both salary adjustments and a couple months of having interim conservation agent. The next two are pretty consistent as well, police and fire. Police, we're looking at 170,000. Every year we have issues with overtime. It's just how the budget is done. It's how the police department operates. This year, the actual overtime is lower than prior years. Accounts for about 115,000 of the deficit. And then the chief has also been having full-time window coverage at the police department. Fire department, 50,000. Same thing, CFD overtime. We also had some vacation buyout for the chief. And so we had some other departmental expenses that offset those deficits. So we're only looking for 50 to cover that. Building, $6,000 for salary adjustments. Again, that's appropriated in the town manager's budget. 60,000 for emergency management. So for most of you that have been around during the pandemic, we received CARES money, and to make it easier to track, I essentially did a catch-all line item within the emergency management department. All funds and expenses flow through that line item, made it easier for approval and tracking processes. And then from there, we allocated those to various grants, whether it's FEMA, CARES, and there were a couple other small grants that we were able to do that with. So this 60,000, some of this will be transferred to grants as I close out the year. But again, as I'm now on with Cohasset as a consultant basis, I'm not quite sure when all these transfers will be done to the various grants. So I want to ensure that we covered ourselves, that before we close out the year, we had ourselves covered. So that 60,000, we might end up having a surplus in emergency management by the time the books are closed, but again, just wanted to be careful. Snow and ice, we had a heck of a year. 240,000 to cover that deficit. And then recreation was a salary adjustment. In Medicare, we just had a small deficit. The actual amount of Medicare expense increased slightly more than what we had budgeted. So we're looking at a total of $734,000 of transfers, and the funding sources that are coming from there to cover the merit increase budget, which Chris just mentioned. We have $240,000 balance in the reserve fund. The town did not do any reserve fund transfers during the year, so that is a full balance in that fund. Workers' comp, 10,000, had a small surplus just due to our conservative budgeting and actual workers' comp coming in lower. Health insurance, 400,000. Now this one was due to conservative budgeting, but also because of the pandemic and claims being so low, Maya had provided a 1-month premium holiday to all their communities. So that's actually essentially most of that, what that 400,000 is. I believe the total surplus in that health insurance line is about 450. And a lot of that relates to that 1-month premium holiday. And then the last item, just balancing out the funds, is from our risk management department. Again, this is all our various umbrella insurances, property and casualty, which just came in better than expected. So we had a surplus in there to help cover. So that covers the 734 transfers to and from. I'd be happy to take any questions regarding any of these transfers.
We have any questions?
I just have a quick question.
Diane?
Well, thanks, Don, for being here. This question is, whoops, hang on, sorry about that. This question is probably more for Chris, but just in terms of legal services, did we have a significant uptick in our retainer, or is a lot of this just the extra work they're doing to get kind of our committees up to speed on a whole bunch of things? Because I know there's not a ton of pending litigation.
So this was primarily just with the transition. There was a lot of intensive work that was done by Council of Planning with the Conservation Commission and even the Select Board to some extent. It was that they spent a lot of time doing training and assistance, and there were also a couple of major. There weren't a lot, Diane, but there were a couple of things that were fairly big. I'm expecting that number is going to come down.
I was going to say in FY23, did we budget 150 again, or are we kind of splitting the difference?
The other part of it is that we're in a contract negotiation cycle, and our legal bills for labor always spike up in that cycle. They go back down. We had 7 active negotiations going on. So that's another one of the reasons that was higher than normal.
Great, thank you. Thanks, Don.
Welcome.
Any other comments? Chair will entertain a motion to approve the fiscal year 22 transfers.
So moved.
Second.
Had a motion made and seconded to approve the fiscal year 22 year-end transfers. Roll call vote. Corey?
Ray Evans, aye.
Diane?
Diane Kennedy, aye.
Paul?
Paul Grady, aye.
Jack Creighton, aye. Motion carries
Jane
unanimously.
Hill
I'm-
Sneaking
Thanks,
in.
everybody.
Thank you,
All right.
Don.
Thank you, Don. All right, moving on, our Treats Pond easements. A little background on that. We finally, after, I don't know, Chris, 10+ years, came to an agreement to extend the pipe that drains Treats Pond. It has to go through various property. It required easements. A lot of people needed to be involved. A lot of people had differing interpretations of what was needed and what they were willing to handle and legally, but I believe that we have got them all on the same page, which is probably a miracle in and of itself. So we're going to vote on the easements, and I see Brian, could you give the board an overview of what exactly these easements will accomplish?
Sure, like you said, Jack, well, let me just back up. The Treats Pond issue has gone on for decades. It's really several decades old with the flooding issues down there. The easements for the drainage pipe extension, the redesign of the drainage pipe extension include the 5 that are in front of you. And after a decade of negotiations that I've been involved in, we finally came to agreement on that. And the pipe work has been done. It's functional. And for the first time in really in 50 or 60 years, the drainage is working properly down there.
Any questions or comments? Is there anybody in the audience who'd like to comment on this matter? Okay, we have a bunch of easements on there. Is the board comfortable in doing them as a group, or would you like to do them individually? Diane, I'm sorry.
I just have a question about, one of the easements was already voted on by the board, I believe, so I don't know whether we need to do that again. It only has 2 signatures, I noticed.
I think it'd be better, Diane, if I'm sorry, Jack, if I can.
Oh, yeah, go right ahead. Sure.
I think it'd be better if you voted on all 5.
Sounds great.
And then the other
Separately or collectively, or does that not matter?
it doesn't really matter. I mean, I don't think it matters, so long as they're all noted. The other thing is we're going to need all of, or at least 3 of you to come in the next couple of days to get these signed, because we got to get them signed and then recorded as, so if it's possible for you to swing by town hall in the next couple of days, that would be awesome.
Okay. Does anybody want to read them?
I would move, Jack, if you'll entertain a motion, I'm happy to move to approve the easements contained in our select board package. I'm not sure we need to read each of them out loud.
Okay.
I'm
Or
happy
just
to
read the
provide-
addresses, just read the addresses.
Yeah.
And names, yeah.
The easement, the first easement is between the town and Priscilla Badger Dewey, Talbot Dewey Jr., and Peter Dunster Dewey with an address of 91 Atlantic Avenue, Cohasset, Mass. That's the first one. The second one is between the town of Cohasset and David Graney with an address of 87 Atlantic Avenue, Cohasset, Mass. The third one is between R. Michael Scary and Helene P. Scary with an address of 95 Atlantic Avenue in Cohasset, Massachusetts. The next one is between 79 Atlantic LLC with an address of 79 Atlantic Avenue, Cohasset, Mass. with the town of Cohasset. And I believe it's just those 4, right, Chris? Did I leave anything out? 4 easements.
Brian, was only 4? Yeah. I don't have,
Yeah, that's all that's on the packet. That's all. we
Second.
vote on. Who said, who seconded?
Corey, I would second.
All right, we had a motion to approve the aforementioned Treats Ponds easements made and seconded. Roll call vote. Corey Evans,
Corey Evans, aye.
Diane,
Diane Kennedy, I.
Paul,
Paul Grady, aye.
Jean,
Jean Haley Dippledy.
Jack Creighton, aye. Motion passes unanimously. Okay. Brian, thank you. This is probably the longest negotiations you've been involved with in Cohasset, I believe.
Hopefully the longest and last.
But we hope so as well. Okay. Moving on to infrastructure and long-term financial planning. We're going to recap some discussions, next steps, outreach to the public and other relevant committees. If we come to agreement on some of these things, we do have the ability to vote. And if members of the board want to do it as is on the agenda, start with long-term financial planning, or people want to make general comments, I leave it up to the discretion of the board. Jane,
I would weigh in here and say, I think that our likely next step is to convene a smaller group and invite advisory capital and the school committee and the principals, the chair and vice chair of those committees, to sit down and begin discussing what long-term financial planning would mean, and any resources that we need, because those are likely going to be the key stakeholders that not only look at the capital items or the infrastructure items that are listed below, but also any operating budget issues that we may need to face, whether on the school or town side. So really trying to get the holistic picture of what's happening as to our town finances, which I think, makes sense. And I think that would likely include intaking all of the items that are sort of on the horizon, both in terms of just our integrating the regular capital and operating budget processes with the infrastructure items that we've been considering, and doing financial modeling in that context. Very akin to, for example, the Hingham process that they just did, that I know I keep talking about, but I'm going to because I think it was a good model, where they're looking at pressures on their budget as well as infrastructure items that they are considering, looking at the overall effect that they may be having on residents and taking that all into account as they move forward on suggesting various things to their residents. And then the last piece I would suggest is whether we want to consider additional revenue sources and discuss that as a group as well. That was another facet of the Hingham process that they did, to look at 5 to 10 years out with all of the financial picture of the town.
so you're proposing some kind of joint task force? Would this be an official committee appointed by the select board, or were you just saying that we should start some informal discussions?
I think we can start with a working group, and if we feel like we need to do something more formal, we can come back with that. I think a part of this is just identifying the resources that we may think aren't necessary. I appreciate that we have some town staff constraints too. And so we'll have to think about that. But I think it's important to have those stakeholders in the room.
Diane, did you raise your hand?
Yeah, just to continue that thread, I agree, this is really important. I am concerned a little bit about staff resources, because ultimately the primary source material has to come from the staff, other than the spitballing of ideas, obviously, which I don't think there's any shortage of people that can contribute to that conversation. So, Chris, I definitely think it's something Chris should help us manage the working group, because, we did a budget, this group maybe 6 or 7 years ago, and, did population studies, and it ended up kind of becoming the project of 2 members of that working group. And they did great work, and it's definitely time to do it, but it does require tremendous staff resources. The other question I have is, especially because of our, the finance department's turnover there, is whether we might need a consultant. And I know this is putting the cart before the horse, but I think my first question is, do we have a line item in the budget where we could actually take money and put it towards some kind of a consultant to come and facilitate these conversations and help build out the report? Because if not, if there isn't a engineering, like we have an engineering line item, if there isn't anything like that to get those resources, then we're going to have to go to special town meeting, and that's going to be part of mapping out this timeline better.
Well, perhaps we might want to have a kind of an informal group to get to the point where we ask those questions. But Corey, your comments? I see your hand is up.
Yeah, no, I think that's kind of the prudent way to move forward. And I also suggest that maybe, before we even do that part, we invite capital budget to, because I do know that some of the long-term planning is something that I've heard mentioned in meetings and it's been worked on for years. I'd love to listen to them to see where they are. That way we're not, kind of starting from scratch. If there's been work done here, I think we should take advantage of that. And I'd love to be part of that. So a part of me says if we can just do a joint meeting together, then we all can listen at the same time and have all the information together, which I think would be really useful.
Diane or Jean, Diane?
No, adding on is maybe that's where we start. Maybe we start with a joint select board advisory. I think we have to do advisory because you can do all the capital planning you want, but if you can't fund your budget, you got some real challenges. So like maybe the three big committees have a facilitated conversation, start putting out on a board, what are the big things we want to tackle, and then drill down. And it might end up being 2 working groups working in parallel. I don't know, but I think it's best to bring all the team together, especially given staff limitations.
Yeah, Jane?
Yeah, I would reiterate, I think the schools are a critical piece. They're the majority of our operating budget, and they have the potential largest capital outlay in the near future. And so it would be problematic not to hear directly from the school committee, or at least some representatives on them. My only issue with having capital advisory, select board, and school committee is you start to then get huge committees or huge meetings where it's just hard to work productively in that. But I think we could think through some initial meetings. And I see we have capital, Mr. Joyce is here from capital budget, and so I don't know if he wants to weigh in on his opinion in terms of what's most effective, but I think there's an openness to whatever makes sense. It's just, it can't be so large that it's unproductive too.
Yeah, I agree. And I totally forgot about the schools, and they actually drove the last capital budget project or the last financial planning group.
I think one of the things that we're looking at is, just to recap some things that are pretty obvious. We have a potential 170 million if the schools get rebuilt, 70 if they could be repaired, or right. We have probably 20 million plus for town hall. We've got 15 million plus or minus for the fields. We have other issues that we're not quite sure. We also have some of our long-term debt is rolling off. So rather than going for a 2.5 override, although technically a rollover is an override, replacing existing debt that's been paid off. And there's a whole wide range of issues. When we decide how we're going to move forward, we might give some thought, and I'm going to throw this back to the board. Do we want to get a couple of very experienced financial people, maybe the chair of capital budget or somebody from the school committee, and just as an informal group to give us the overall framework of what we as a select board need to then set up a committee to charge? And I'm just saying, do we want to have a preliminary discussion before we move to that? I don't know. I'm just throwing that out for the board to discuss. Jean, and then Diane.
Jack, I just want to alert you that Brian Host, the chair of capital budget, has been promoted and is.
That's Brian. Oh, it's Brian Host. Oh, okay, yeah. I'm actually meeting with Brian on Friday, but and we also would want somebody from PEB, because that's clearly a part of that. So anyway, Brian, your hand is up, your comments.
Thanks. Everything that I jotted down here listening to the conversation has actually been covered by the various members of the select board. So I applaud the thoughtful way that you're approaching this. I would just in summary concur with what Jean Healy-Dippold suggested at the outset, which is at least to get this started. We probably shouldn't overwhelm the room with a huge number of people. I think it would probably be more productive to start with a smaller group just to identify the issues and perhaps the strategies that we could take for the broader group to address. So just as a starter, I would suggest a smaller meeting with the chair and vice chair of each of the constituent committees, at least to start to whiteboard this and map it out and give it some direction. Otherwise, I think it will be very difficult to steer.
Well, comments from the board? I agree, Brian, but anyway.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that if it's a like a facilitated conversation. It's just something obviously every one of us is going to want to be a part of. And one thing we might do, and maybe Chris can work with the chairs of the relevant committees, is just send out a questionnaire like we did with when we had our consultant come in, just so that each committee can say, here are the big things we want to cover in this meeting. I just want to make sure we're as inclusive as possible.
Yeah.
One thought, Diane, I'm just thinking back to this mechanism as it served, years ago, right? To settle budget issues right before town meetings. It was kind of chair and vice chair at the table, but anyone that wanted to be in the room was welcome.
Absolutely. Yep.
And had the ability to raise their hand. That was a forum that was extraordinarily effective. And perhaps, that's what works here, so that, we're not holding up a meeting date to get a quorum on each of these committees. We're guaranteed to have at least 2, but if more want to attend, that's great.
Yep, that sounds great. That is how it worked, and it was very effective. I agree.
It worked very well.
I just think we need to make sure Chris is in the loop. He is the chief financial officer. And again, we're going to have to get a lot of our primary source material from our finance department.
It's a great point. The matter's we've been silent on the matter. We've been focused on the committees, but I don't think any of these discussions take place without our staff.
All right, so assuming that we agree to that, let's delineate the committees that would be in this.
Yeah.
Jane, your list of committees, or
Yeah, I think it would be the select board, capital, advisory, schools. I think starting with those 4 is probably the sensible way. And I think anyone can be in the room, to Brian's point. These would all be public meetings anyway, so everyone can watch as well. And participate.
And with advisory and capital, I mean, they're obviously our finance committees are also, Troika appointed. Something like PEB is important, but they report through the select board. They're one of our committees. So, again, I'm sure Tim Davis will be there. But I think that makes sense.
so do we want PEB to be? So that'll be 5.
I don't think we do PEB. I think Diane is suggesting, and Diane, I don't mean to put words in your mouth, but PEB is one of our committees, Jack.
Correct.
So
Yeah, I know that.
we can reach out to them for recommendations to the extent anything, because town hall is our committee too, right? Arguably, there's an impact on the town hall building committee as well. And there is probably impacts on other committees who will want to be involved too.
So how do we want to structure this? Do we want to structure this as a working group reporting to the select board with a quorum? No, I
No.
agree. By the way.
I think it's a working group that doesn't necessarily, it's a public meeting, but it's not a group we are charging yet. It's really just an initial conversation with chair, vice chair of advisory, capital, select board, and school committee.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there's no quorum,
No quorum,
participating.
so it's, I think the reason I asked that question, I think if we tell them we want to do that, then we may in fact create a board under open meeting. And do we want it under open meeting and minutes? Or do we want to just suggest that we have an informal group?
Jack, I think if you and Jean and the other chairs want to have a meeting and you're going to broadcast it or whatever, I think that'd be wonderful. And I think having just you guys, I don't think you have to put too much over it. But I think, you all as leadership in the town can absolutely do that. I look forward to kind of the productive conversation, and then you can tell us kind of what you came up with. I think that's great.
Well, that's what I'm just trying to not get this over bureaucratized, however you pronounce it. But I agree, Corey, that's what I'm trying to get at. Are members of the board comfortable with this, Diane?
Yeah, just, the last iteration of the similar board was exactly what we're talking about, which is the chair, vice chair. It was called the Long Range Planning Group. It was formally charged with a charge from the select board as a select board committee. But I think what we should do is at least have an initial conversation of that group, figure out what the structure is, and it might be a couple of structures to carry forth the work product that we can come back and formally charge. Because it's not like,
Exactly. So we don't want to make it an official committee.
not yet.
Unless
Not-
necessary.
Paul,
Just under the impression from Gene's initial comment, that this is really, I think we might be getting a little busy putting the cart before the horse. It's starting out informally, if I'm not incorrect. It's just to figure out what,
right,
with the committees, the two chairs and the chairs of the various committees. So I think we might be getting start creating some busy work for the, the drives even started.
no, I think we don't want that. We want to just have informal. I see Mike Dick has his raised hands, but I think what I'm hearing from the board is that we don't want to take it to that step of formalizing it. We just want to say, hey, it's a good idea for these people to sit down and meet together. Yeah, Mike? There?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hi, thank you for promoting me. I wanted to remind everyone that not only with the schools, we also have water and sewer enterprise entities. I'm liaison to water. I know that they've got several million in possible spending on additional improvements, not to mention a new water treatment plant in the long range plan. So I just want to make sure we have them on the list. I also want to just offer my help I'm not saying as the facilitator, but as a consultant or a helper in trying to organize this effort. It's what I did professionally in going after process improvement and problem solving. So I have some thoughts and ideas on how we can actually get things organized from a first step, second step, third step, and I'd be happy to help out there. So that's everything I have for you guys. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Mike. Brian, is your hand up again or?
No, it's not. It was just never taken down.
All right. So I think Mike's suggestion is he would like to assist in that, and I don't think we have a problem with him being part of the group. Does anybody have a problem with that? He's already on capital budget.
Mike is the vice chair, so that.
Yeah.
would-
So he's on it anyway.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think we let them figure it out for themselves. I don't want to micromanage them. Diane.
Yeah, no, I just want to say, I don't want to overcomplicate it either. And I think maybe the recommendation after this initial meeting, and I do think we should include at least the chair, so they don't have a quorum of water and sewer. But, maybe what they do is come back to us and with a recommended, next steps. And if we have to charge a committee, we charge a committee. But, I agree.
So Jack, I would suggest, and I don't know if we need a motion, but I think it's just that we direct Mr. Senior to convene a group of the chair and vice chairs of advisory, capital, schools, select board, and ask and invite the chair of water and sewer to attend as well, with the goal of trying to put some structure and process and recommendations around this in terms of next steps.
So let's
And when I
let's
say
make that-
this.
let's make that a select board request and we'll vote on it. I think we should vote on it to give it a little bit of teeth, but that's a request that he do something, so we're not creating anything. Is there?
So moved.
So,
Seconded.
Second.
okay, we have a motion. Gene's motion is made and seconded. Is there any further discussion? Roll call vote, Corey,
Ravens eye.
Paul,
Paul Grady, aye.
Diane,
Diane Kennedy, aye.
Gene,
Jean Haley Dippledy.
Jack Creighton, I. Chris, you're so instructed. Thank you. Okay. Town Hall, Fields and Courts, Roads and Sidewalk. Is there anybody from Town Hall committee here who'd like to weigh in? Or Chris, can you update us?
I think you had a really substantive conversation last week. I'm not sure that there's anything new from Thursday for today. I think you had a very substantive conversation. I think you heard a lot from members. I know Mark Cameron's in the audience if he has anything to add.
I think and Jack, if I may interject, I think the main thing is just to recap from last Thursday, what we heard from that committee, and certainly Mark, correct me if I'm wrong, that we're looking at their opinion of probable cost was 19 to 20 million, depending on when that estimate was, when the bid could get confirmed. But the real question is, in addition to cost, is what is the actual cost coming out of the construction risk manager process? And we heard from Vertex, their consultant, relatively in depth about all of the hills and valleys of that process, and essentially how it was going to take a long time, potentially even beyond, like maybe after our fall town meeting. Unclear, but it does take a lengthy time. So, that's something that we want to continue to track really closely, is when do we get the actual numbers for Town Hall, and how is that construction risk manager process going? I wouldn't expect that Mark, frankly, would have an update, given that we just had this discussion on Thursday, but.
Yeah. Mark, would you like to address us?
How you doing? Good evening.
Hi, Mark.
Yeah, really, no real significant updates since Thursday. But again, just to solidify that as part of the next step of the process, it's not creating a new number, it's dialing the number that we've got currently forecasted and becoming more accurate and precise with that. So we've got a pretty good gauge on where we're at with the numbers that we shared last week. But as we get through the process, they'll become more finite and definitive.
And just confirm for those people who just tuning in for the first time here, that's the total thing, and you're not subtracting the amount that you have a kind of agreement with CPC?
We showed that in the chart, the overall project budget. We showed the hard cost, the construction costs, all of the associated soft costs and contingencies. And we also showed the appropriations. So that created a subtotal of a total project. And then from that, we then deducted out the CPC portion that we thought we would be getting, which is again estimated until we provide them, until they commit to a full number, as well as the appropriations that have been put forth to date so far through the town meetings over the past couple of years.
So tentatively, after you subtracted those, what would be the net further expense? Roughly.
I don't have it in front of me, Jack. It was
Okay.
The whole overall project was 19 to 20, and then subtract out, I think it was in the 14 or 15, 16. I have to go back and look at my notes.
Okay.
I don't have them in front of me.
That's basically what my understanding was.
And again, it depends on when the project actually gets approved financially, and that'll dictate when we can buy out the job, right? If versus if we're buying it now versus 6 months from now, there is a financial difference to that. So that again has got to be realized that isn't somewhat a fluctuation, as the fact that we're forecasting out with annual town meetings and when we're going to get votes. Originally we thought this might be on the ballot for this year.
Okay.
I don't know if that's still going to happen, but those kind of factors are dependent and contribute to the overall price.
Yeah, we understand that. Thank you, Mark. Paul?
So, but in the long run, we do want to wait until this advisor that we hired on comes in with those numbers, right, Mark?
We don't necessarily have to. Again, it becomes a little bit of a chicken and the egg thing. I mean, you can't take every little last step and until you commit to the job, right? So at some point, we have to say that we feel comfortable with where we're at. We have to look at the data that we've been putting together and proceed.
Okay. So any other questions from the select board about where we stand in town hall? Okay. Fields and courts. Chris, who do you think is best to address?
So Jack, just one update, and
Go.
I think if Michelle is in the audience, that'd be great, but the only sort of, frankly, unexpected update that we have there is that our consultants Activitas came back with an updated plan on the Deer Hill and Osgood project projection as it relates to parking. We don't have a cost estimate on that yet. We literally just got how it would look parking wise, and I'm actually going to try to share my screen so everyone, including the public, can see it. This is also accessible online on our town website. If you Google Cohasset Field Study, I believe you should be coming to this as well. Sorry, I'm looking to see this. But that's where we are right now in terms of fields. I don't know if anyone has any questions. Again, we don't have a cost estimate yet on that additional parking amount as I sort of scroll through to see,
Gene, sorry, Diane. Jack, I was just gonna
Yeah, go ahead.
comments while Gene was searching. Yeah, because I think I saw that addition, and I think that's really why you hire a consultant to kind of flesh out and create creative solutions. I think there's great potential, and I'm looking forward to the project getting cost better, and then us starting to having the conversation. Since you guys are doing the capital budget planning, we have these parallel tracks that are all working towards the same goal. I think that's wonderful.
Okay. Thank you, Corey.
Gene,
So-
I've got the thing here too, if you want.
Oh, yeah, Corey, actually, let me, it will be quicker for you. I can't find the packet for some reason. Are you allowed to share your screen? Or do you need access? Okay, there you go. You should be able to do it. Okay.
Here, is this the one, Gene?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So again, this highlights too, why we absolutely need to include the schools. And now that we just got this information, I would suggest to the select board, the next step is we may want to, start to bring in the school committee, because we're talking about doing some significant maneuvering, right, on school grounds. And I think that may be wrapped up in the bigger question too about finances in terms of how much we want to do here versus other school needs. And so I do think it will be wrapped up into a more holistic conversation. But pragmatically, I think, one, we're looking to get the cost estimates, and two, we need to reach out to the school committee, perhaps in a formal way, to alert them and get feedback from them. And so that would be my suggestion. And I'm happy to sort of talk about the actual plan and what I think that means. Hey, Jack.
Yeah.
Mark, Diane and Corey.
Yeah, well, I can't.
All right, do you want me to take it down, Mr. Chair?
Yeah, take it down.
Okay.
I think. There we go. Okay. Mark?
Yeah, just wanted to follow up. I just pulled up my notes. So that appropriation that we'd be looking for town hall for less what we've already been provided, and the CPC would be in the range of 13.2 to 14.1 million.
Okay, thank you. That's very helpful, Mark. As we zero in on these various things, even though we know all these numbers are subject to change, it helps us to get all these moving pieces together and understand that.
Of course.
So fields and courts, that's a priority. So did we get any further information? I don't know whether Brian would have it on the pickleball versus tennis courts, or adding pickleball to tennis courts. Is it a significant extra cost? If we heard anything more from that, Diane, you're raising your hand.
Yeah, no, I actually have more or less a governance question, which is kind of my thing. You know, especially with a project of this magnitude and the interest of all the residents in town for it, I do wonder if this is now a point at which we form a formal committee to kind of drill down and work together. And maybe it's, and I know it's so hard with reps from other committees because we're all stretched, but right now, these conversations have been in a working group environment, and I think we need to socialize them with a greater audience. And the other question I have is Activita was hired to do the needs analysis, which I think they did a great job with, and I'm really excited about that. Do they, you know, do we have enough money to continue pushing along the engineering and the design for what we might be looking for in the future for fields and courts, et cetera?
Okay. Any other select board comments on how we pay for all this?
Yeah, I mean, just to tee off that, I mean, yeah,
Go
my
ahead.
question, sorry, my question basically is, you know, if we do want to get the next step, what's the funding request? Like, do we have to, you know, what is the next step for our board to take? You know, this is, I think drawings are great, but we got to get to the next step. So identifying whatever that is. I also do agree with Diane's point about, you know, one, I want to be sure we socialize with the neighbors, but also I want to be sure that, you know, we have meeting with Open Space and Rec, and, you know, we have these, you know, and if you want to do that with the chairs, however you want to do it, but let's include those conversations. I don't want to get too far over our skis and then miss something here. So.
No, I think that's a good point. I think we want to be, well, I think we're in a process now of discussing all of these things as a board. And these things are coming up, and we're starting to see which we really need to move forward on. It's a bit of a process. We're hoping we're going to be able to do some of the priorities a lot sooner, but that's not going to happen. So I think we're making some pretty good progress. How are we ready to start pricing these things? I don't know. And Jean, you had your hand up.
Just to level set, I think the tenor that I'm hearing, whether today or last week, is that we like these plans. We want to move forward, including putting them out to other boards, or if we create a committee. Because there was a lot of options set forth in the field study, and what we're looking at right now is the result of narrowing other options that were in the field study. So we're not doing those, to be perfectly clear, based on the feedback we got during the working groups and otherwise. And so I just want to test the assumption with the select board that this is the preferred course of action from a big picture standpoint. You know, appreciating that there's questions about money and funding and, you know, wanting to go through the process.
I think we need to, and I would tend to agree, at a certain point, and let's be honest, to not only the board, but to the town, at a certain point, we're going to have a lot of things everybody agrees we should do. Paying for them may not be possible, and there might be things that we'd like to do, we can't do. But I think what we need to do is get to some kind of useful list in which we've prioritized and get some rough idea what it's gonna cost. And I think that's very important. Paul.
I have a question for my own education, and I'm more towards Gene, I think. Hasn't a lot of this already been done? You know, boards, the fields and studies and everything put together. So we kind of have something. I just, from something you just said, struck me is that what's out there is what we've come up with, what people have agreed to. So is it necessary that we need another committee to start another committee on something that's been done? Again, I may be off on this, but when we want to start moving the project forward?
So my understanding, and Jean's referenced the
Oh.
working group. So, we
Yeah.
had the needs analysis public presentation, and I think the working group has taken it kind of offline and drilled into. So I think it's just more a matter of the working group kind of being more formalized. I have heard from some school people that they are, or in rec commission in particular, that they haven't been included in some of the working group conversations. So, and I could be wrong about that. I didn't see their minutes, but whatever, I do think if there's a structure already in place to have these conversations, great, let's advance them. And I think these are more concepts right now, but they have to get, as we learned last week, we have to take these concepts kind of to the people. Is there buy-in in general? And then let's push the engineering and get the projects done. So whatever structure that might look like, I don't know.
Thanks, Diane.
I have an answer on what happened, but Corey's had his hand up for a while.
Oh, I'm sorry, Corey, I missed that.
You can go ahead because you may answer my question.
Okay. Yeah, so to be clear, what the process has been to date is that town meeting said, go do a field study. And so what the meetings have been about, including oftentimes just with town staff, including from the schools, from the rec department, pulling together all the data necessary that Activitas needed. Activitas held an open meeting in January and said, here's the data we've gotten from everyone. And we publicized that and said, Activitas is going to be presenting and taking in public feedback. And then following that, Activitas followed up with a few, like additional pieces of information they need. And Michelle was running that process. And so she could tell you more. But then when we got to Activitas actually coming out with the report, we then had another follow-up meeting based on the report to say, this is what Activitas is coming out with. It was a public meeting, anyone could attend. We publicized it through our public meetings and otherwise, including on social media, and anyone who wanted to attend could, but it was relatively informal. And so that's why I do think it's time to maybe do outreach, particularly to the schools, because they have jurisdiction over school grounds. Particularly now that we're, for the first time, really, in fairness to the rest of these groups, we're getting cost numbers. We haven't gotten these in the past. This is the first time we're getting the actual costs on, or cost estimates, I should say, on these new plans that are coming out with Osgood and Deer Hill. We can start to see what this is really looking like. So I do think we're moving to a new phase of public outreach. The last phase has really just been information gathering and asking questions of Activitas. And we don't have additional money that I'm aware of.
Well, you're exactly where I thought you were, so which is good. So you answered my question, so thank you.
Yeah.
So we're not in a bad spot.
No, we're moving forward and we're starting to narrow stuff down. And, I hope that, I see, is your hand still up, Corey?
Yeah,
Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I think the Activitas and all the ideas are really good. I would like, before we kind of set some priorities and start motioning, I would love to hear from Open Space and Rec and School Committee kind of on what they think the priorities are, right? I think we're all sitting here going, we want to do this. I think one step would be, why don't you tell us what you think would work best for the programs that you run? And just to be sure that we don't go left when we actually need right. Or something like that, just so I think we all have our own priorities. We like stuff, but I just want to be sure we're not missing anything obvious from the people that run these every day.
I have a great idea, Chris. Could you reach out to both those committees and say we need a read?
Can I just make a little bit of an edit? And I think it's the Recreation Commission that we want, although Open Space and Rec is great
Totally
too,
missed
but
my apologies.
the elected Rec Commission is really, I think, what we're talking about.
My apologies.
I figured Chris would figure that one out.
Yeah, and just
And then we've got this done. Okay, Jean, I'm sorry.
I just think so people are mentally prepared, and Corey, I don't disagree with that sentiment. We did talk with the schools, including the athletic director, about fields, as well as rec about fields and capacity and what they could do and couldn't do, et cetera. I think the bigger issue that you may be hitting upon in terms of how to spend limited taxpayer resources, including if we're going to request debt exclusions, is that the schools might have priorities that are not necessarily more fields. It may be programmatic. It may be a whole bunch of other things. And I think that's fine. And we should definitely hear what they have to say and take that feedback in. And frankly, that's what I would expect also in the context of this long-term financial planning we just decided to do. I think that is the appropriate vehicle. In addition to this, to really start to have those discussions in terms of the holistic big picture plan. So I do expect that also, and I just wanted to put a footnote, also in the other, working group that we just discussed, there would be those discussions moving in parallel.
And, we also want to keep in the back of our mind, as I'm prepared to be the Grinch that stole Christmas, is that what does this do to the tax rate? What does this do to the residents, what they're going to pay for property taxes? Because, we have all these wonderful things and our eyes may be bigger than our wallet, or bigger than what our wallet is comfortable with. So we just need to be aware of that. And, so I just stole Christmas. Let's go back to the tree. But anyway, Mr. Grady.
But Jack, that'd be something that will be presented to the town in full. So they will be given
Yes.
an opportunity to choose. So that thing I think is the most important thing. Do they want to sacrifice that pickleball court, for instance? I mean, my guess is no. But as long as they realize the ancillary costs and effects, but the town is happy with it, I think it's just getting it out there, I think. And I agree
Well,
with
that's
you.
that we are engaged in a very robust process and a lot of meetings, and a lot of our time, and not only the select board, but our boards and committees have been doing incredible amounts of work. And one of the things with our communications initiative, already we're seeing a more effective town website and more effective information getting out, at least judging from the feedback that I get. People are more knowledgeable, but we're getting there, and it's going to be a lot of work, but I think we're well on our way. Any other comments on fields and courts? Jean?
Could I suggest next steps is that we can reach out to the rec commission and the school committee to identify the best approach, whether it's we go to them or we invite them to hear from us, and simultaneously, and this is for Chris, we can have Michelle follow up with what would be the practical next steps if we wanted to move forward with a construction bid estimate. What do we think we need in terms of resources or funds in order to make more precise determinations on that next step? Just so we know what that sequencing looks like, including if school committee or rec commission asks.
Yeah, and to bounce off that, I mean, that may be something where we can get something ready if we want to do some sort of appropriation at fall town meeting for the next steps. I mean, I think we're lined up well to say, okay, we need another X amount of money and let's move this forward, and we've got buy-in from everybody. And here we are at town meeting saying this is what we've done. I think that's great.
Okay, further, so I think the consensus is we reach out to rec and school committee and just say, we're looking at this stuff. What does it look like to you? And how important it is, and what do you have an idea of what it costs? So, Chris, can we put that on your shoulders? Good. Yeah, I like that thumbs up. Let the record show he said in the affirmative. So yeah. All right. Are there further comments on fields? Okay, I think we made some progress on this. Roads and sidewalks. We had Thursday, Brian gave us a pretty good feeling for the multi-year progress on that. Does anybody need to go over that again? Okay, Brian, do you have any comments you'd like to add?
Jack, I think Corey has his hand up.
Oh, I'm sorry, Corey.
I'll let Brian go when we're ready for discussion, please. Just to don't forget.
No, just briefly, so we're getting the report this Friday. It's due from the consultant on the assessment of all of our public roads. And we're going to compare that to what we have in hand on our own paving schedule. And we'll make some informed decisions on what to move forward with going forward. That's it.
Okay. Jane? Oh, I'm sorry, Corey.
It's okay. I've got something to talk about, so anyone else can go first.
All right.
On the paving, on the road survey, Brian, can the consultant provide us with some cost estimates as we think through a paving schedule in terms of where sort of the prices are now, appreciating that they may increase? In terms of, for example, like if the road was in complete disrepair, like maybe a Margin Whitehead stretch where we had to do a road reclamation, what sort of, again, appreciating the averages, and there's a lot of variability depending on what you hook into. I think that will be important for our paving schedule and long-term financial planning for us to sort of have a sense as we look at how much we can do and how much we're funding and what the needs are, you know what I mean? I think that'd be really helpful if he could provide that, and to see what he says and, you know, how that comports with your understanding too.
Yeah, so there will be a cost portion. There'll be the assessment and then recommended repairs or road treatments along with cost data. I'll ask them if they can do kind of I don't know if they're in the financial forecasting or if they could do projections for what we're going to see in the next bid. I will repeat from last week, our MAPC contract, which is our consortium paving contract, we group all of our quantities together with other communities, is up for bid. Bids are due in December, January. So that will fix our cost for the next 2 years after.
Okay. Diane, did you, Corey? We're
Sure.
waiting.
My apologies, since we're on roads and sidewalks. I'm in sidewalks, so I'm a little bit ahead of the meeting, I think, or ahead of the meeting.
That's
So
all right.
if we're still talking about paving, I'll stay on hold over here.
We need to walk over to sidewalks as quickly as we can.
Well, and I'll try not to hold it up too much, but Brian, just the report that we're getting on Friday, that's basically just to kind of somewhat prioritize the road kind of maintenance projects. You know, with our annual appropriation and our
The intent
State funding.
is just a condition assessment. So it's
Okay.
going to give a condition assessment, you know, from 1 to 10 of each
Okay.
road, and then a list of really in order of condition. And then we'll compare that to our long-term paving plan and prioritize based on that.
right, but it doesn't include kind of the bigger kind of different projects that, you know, like in Elm Street, like if we were to move forward with doing.
No, it doesn't.
the-
It's only existing conditions and how to, you know, go back to existing conditions. It doesn't take into account sidewalks or making new sidewalks
New
or
bike lanes or
expanding
anything, yeah.
roads or road diets or anything like that. It's
Great,
just
thank you.
existing.
Okay, Paul? You're muted, Paul.
There we go. No, I think Brian may have just answered my question. So it's just every road in Cohasset, determined going by condition. No recommendations, I'm gonna take it. Just they're gonna lay it out to you, you lay it out to us, and we just see what the conditions of our roads and which ones they believe require the most attention first, right?
Yeah, it'll be a
I'm wrong.
condition assessment, and then there'll be recommendations for repairs, you know, whether it's crack sealing, an overlay, micro surfacing, there's a variety of different things that can happen. So we'll get that report, digest it, and then I think we'll have probably another conversation about it.
Thank you very much.
Brian, does that report at all talk about the sidewalk condition on the roads that do have sidewalks? I think there is a report out there somewhere on that. I don't know where or when it was from, but I've been looking for it.
It does not include sidewalks, it's roads.
Okay, if do you have any sensation if we wanted to get a assessment of sidewalks, the existing sidewalks as part of the broader discussion? Would MAPC help us with that, or is there an easy resource that we can bring on for that work?
I think this consultant would do it as an additional task order.
Okay,
But again, the subgrade and, you know, the loading requirements on sidewalks are not as much as what you need on roads. It's mainly you dealing with ADA and then tight working quarters. So that they could give, you know, we could ask for a task order and then we can make a decision on whether we wanted to move forward with that.
Okay, thank you.
Well,
No, I think he just answered. I'm sorry, son. He's reinventing the wheel. So you could add that onto it, Brian, the sidewalks, the ones that are existing but are degrading, the ones where they could maybe make recommendations where sidewalks could or should go in. I know there's a lot that goes into that.
Yeah, so the assessment that they were hired to do a couple of months back, it's coming to fruition now. That was strictly just road surfaces. If we wanted to add a task order, I'm sure they would give us a proposal on that, and then they could go back out and take a look at all the sidewalks, the sidewalk inventory that we have.
That might be worth doing.
what do they charge for that, Brian?
I don't have a proposal yet. I'll ask them for one.
Yeah, let's get an idea. We could bankrupt ourselves with studies.
Yeah, I mean, for reference, we have 35,000 for this proposal to do all of the public roads.
Okay, so. Okay. Corey.
Okay,
We're
all right,
waiting,
so
we're waiting.
thank you for everyone for just being patient while I mistime my raised hand. But no, I think to echo Paul, I mean, I think the sidewalk things, and it's so glad we're tackling this. You know, there's kind of two things, right? There's existing sidewalks that are more easy to redo because they're there, but they're not crossable. You know, North Main Street, you know, at the end of the Common, bunch of South Main Street, Beechwood. And I do think having the data set to say, listen, these are like red shaded areas where there is a sidewalk, but really it's a problem. I think that would be great data. The other thing that I want to share with the board, and this is all already public record, but I also have it scanned at town hall, is I want to thank a previous member of the 1995 Sidewalk Study Committee, which was in charge of putting in the great sidewalk on Forest Ave. And I think it gives us a template to say, you know, they did a lot of outreach, they did a lot of discussions, not very similar to what the master plan began with. And I say that because the idea that we're going to talk about later about making the zoning bylaw working group into a committee, I think that's a great process for this too. I think a sidewalk study committee that takes what we have from master plan, takes the model of the sidewalk study committee that we had, it was very successful 20 years ago. I know that was a while ago, but it proved to be successful. Engaging Norfolk County commissioners, engaging you know, the state, and then you know, would be the really great way to go the next steps. I've got a lot of emails for the years I've been on the board from basically everyone in town. I think everyone's got thoughts and ideas, and I think if we are clear that this is the sidewalk study committee, everyone will know they can send their ideas and their concerns to that committee at the right time. And that way we hear from everybody possible, and that may be a little bit slower. But if we're going to be waiting for the sidewalk study too, but if we can put all this together, I think that's the best way to have success.
Mm-hmm. Jane?
I think it's probably going to take some time to do long-term financial planning, which is going to probably be the thing that likely needs to happen with a lot of these big projects. The financial planning has to go first. So fortunately or unfortunately, we probably have some time before we devote a significant chunk of money to sidewalks. And I think that if we were to move forward with the committee idea, the one thing that I would highly suggest is we recruit people from different neighborhoods. Because that's where
Great idea.
let's take a different approach to committee appointments, right? Where it's like King Street, Beechwood, like there's parts of Beechwood that appear to be a sidewalk, but they're not. They drop off into a dangerous curve, you know, things like.
That's a great idea. And the local neighbors will know the hot spots. I mean, I think that's what we've learned is we all know our communities best. I think that's brilliant.
So Diana, is your hand up?
Yeah, I put it up while Jean was talking, and sorry.
I'm sorry.
For the exact, no, to basically say what she just said. And I think that, you know, one of the biggest challenges we have is recruiting committee members. and getting new blood engaged. Although we know they all, residents have lots of opinions, and this is one of those, and that's why the Forest Ave one was so successful, because it really brought different neighborhoods in and let them understand that, like, it's just not we can't just deliver on wants as much as all of us would like to be able to do that. So I think that's great. And it might be a way to get them having these conversations kind of in parallel to our role and responsibility for the financial plannings, and just get get people actively engaged in what it takes to make some of these decisions.
Paul?
I'm in full agreement with all of the above on Gene's plan, getting people from all four corners of Cohasset, because everybody, any years I may have in the ground, sidewalks are a huge one. I also agree with the financial aspect of it, but it might be a nice chance to get participation and consensus as to where we go. But I agree with everything everybody's just said on that.
Corey?
Yeah, and I mentioned it, but Gene got me so excited I forgot about it. And actually, Gene, this is really, I guess, your department, and Brian, if you can speak to this. It was mentioned to me that Norfolk County Commissioners has an engineering department and can do a lot of some of this work, maybe not on our dime. So I don't know if that's still the case or not. Brian, is that something we can leverage?
Yeah, so historically, the Forest Ave one, that was Norfolk County had a survey department that they would do by request survey. They, in recent years, there hasn't been a survey department, so I don't know what their staffing level is right now to do survey level design work, which they were able to do 20 years ago. So we can request.
If I am reappointed as your Norfolk County liaison, which is a big if.
Nobody else wants it.
Diane.
They're going in person, so.
Certainly we can ask, but in order to continue, maybe get into the next step, I might suggest what we can do is we can try to, with the help of Chris and Brian, put together, and I'm trying to avoid open meeting law, like trying to figure out the best way. We can propose a charge for a sidewalk committee. If people have background information, and we've tried to put some of it in the packet in terms of work that's already in existence with respect to recommendations from MPIC. But think about what we want to charge the committee specifically to do, and what are the neighborhoods. I mean, I think there probably has to be some form of limits around this, right, to make it feasible and to ensure that we have quorums. But I think maybe we want to consider the neighborhoods and the charge.
And, maybe we, I don't know, maybe with the master plan implementation committee, because a lot of the sidewalk needs were identified in the master plan, and there is some raw data to begin with. So maybe it becomes sort of an offshoot of that, but we can think about the structure and come back with a proposal and hopefully get new voices.
Well, I think what we're in the middle of is there's been a cycle of a lot of people who are very, very active, did a lot of tremendous work. And we're all very grateful. And we're seeing this, we're the present day beneficiaries of work that was done by volunteers in the past and the near past. So we should be aware of that. And I think we can move forward with things like that. But let's be clear what we want to do and when we want to do it, and what the charge is. Do we want it to be a select board committee? Do we want to constitute that? Or do we want to say to, Corey, for example, Corey, how would you, here's your charge from the select board to go figure out how you'd put it together and who would be on it? Does that make sense? Or do we want to charge a committee now? Throwing it up to the select board for discussion.
Yeah, no, I think all of us are happy to do whatever we can to get the charge together and to get people together. I think, I can reach out to some of these members on this to get their guidance, and I'll keep digging up if I get the other charge. I'll work with master plan to be sure. And I think that, it's the merging of these things to move forward. I do think a citizen committee that's, maybe not us, but I do think the idea of having I don't want to say districts, but having representation. And I don't think we'll be want for volunteers on this committee. I think this is something that people will
Right.
step forward and talk about. And I'd love to see that. So happy to work with whatever, if you want me to.
All right, well,
Yeah.
let me see what Paul has to say. And Paul?
No, I'm gonna piggyback on Corey, but I think this might be something for our new and improved website when we get that update tonight. Get that out there, explain it. People, getting on, they're seeing it. I think you're gonna have a robust, I'm hoping you'll have a robust, application process to go through with people that are excited and want to get on board.
Maybe for next steps
Go ahead, Gene.
is Corey does some research, figures out, proposes what may be a charge, and maybe the neighborhoods, Corey, that you think make sense that want to be included. And then Paul, to your point, if next select board meeting, we can review the charge and consider the neighborhoods to be appointed. Once we finalize, then we can put out there for public consumption, all the different, citizens that we request from the different neighborhoods, while also figuring out whatever resources they may need on the backside. Hopefully it won't become like the Hunger Games, but I think that it could be pretty effective if we just sort of do an open broadcast for all the different neighborhoods within Cohasset that are, representative of that neighborhood.
I do think it's important that we understand that a committee has a simple charge that can be done easily and quickly is what we're looking for, rather than a long-term forever and ever and ever. So if Corey, you can design something like that, you bring it back to us, and then we can do that. And I'm sure that you can look at the past things that have been done and put something together. We as a board should be aware that if we ask volunteers to do stuff, a simple, direct charge is easy for them to do. And then it gets done. And then, the nice thing is it's done and we don't have to worry about it. Yeah. So just little treatsy on government efficiency or lack thereof. But anyway, is everybody comfortable with that? I don't think we need to have a particular vote. I see everybody nodding. It's not all right, Corey, have fun. You've given up the rest of your summer for the town. God bless you. All right, moving forward. Unless anybody else has anything. King Street sidewalk, what came out last week of some people who granted are right on King Street. And so everybody thinks their street is important, but King Street is in fact a thoroughfare that connects Route 3, the back way to Route 3, and the shopping centers out there. And they're coming down King Street at a high rate of speed. And we've talked about traffic calming, things that can be done, putting berms, cutouts, a variety of things. Chief Quigley was very helpful last year. Do we have thoughts on King Street? Paul?
Yeah, to me, I'll tell you just by experience the other day, is they're doing this work on 3A, laying the pipe. I mean, King Street to me has kind of jumped to the top of the list. You see people barreling down there now because they're being routed. And 3A is becoming one way at certain times of the day until the construction is done anyway. But that's all it takes. So I've seen people veering off, heading down King Street. Not they don't do it anyway, but all traffic's been diverted there during those working hours, mind you.
Yeah.
So that's kind of jumped to the top of the list.
All right, Diane?
Yeah, Chief Quigley talked to us last week about, how difficult it is, obviously, with 3 or 4 cars out there to enforce traffic on all the streets. And, one of the things he talked about was how it's really effective to do road diets and use that kind of stuff. But that's also super expensive. And I had somebody reach out to me, and those signs, those solar signs that are out there, they are very expensive as a sign, but they're not expensive in the grand scheme of things. They're $6,000, as opposed to, we know, trying to give a road diet to Elm Street, the costs are pretty significant. So Chris, I definitely think it's something we should look into a little more. And you know, I'm anti-signs in terms of just visual disturbance, but I think if they're effective, safety is paramount. And somebody also told me that they were someplace in Europe and they had signs that were emojis. So like if you were going under the posted speed limit, you'd get like a thumbs up emoji with a like good for you or a smiley face. And then if you were bad, you know, if you were going over the speed limit, you get a thumbs down. So I mean, there are really creative ways of signaling and trying to control some traffic in the short term. I mean, obviously, long term.
Very good. Jane?
I just want to note that the King Street resident, many King Street residents, I want to say this could be wrong, approximately 100 signatures from King Street residents petitioning us for a sidewalk. I believe they were delivering that today, although we haven't received it yet. And so there's definitely interest on King Street. And I think Corey, one of those sidewalk neighborhoods definitely should be King Street for sure. And the reason that I think a petition is relevant too, as we move forward in consideration of all the different sidewalks in terms of the existing sidewalks. King Street may be unique where it might be a brand new sidewalk. And I think the petition is important to consider and put on the list, so to speak, of the, you know, overall sidewalks we're considering, because it shows that the neighbors might hopefully be cooperative from if we had to, you know, encroach on some land in order to facilitate a sidewalk if we wanted to do that. And so it's one consideration far off in the distance, but I did want to make note and acknowledge the petition that we got, and that King Street, I think, is probably, again, unique in terms of it's a brand new sidewalk compared to the other sidewalks that will presumably be reviewed by this committee that are existing.
And Jean brings up a very good point that was brought up Thursday. In order to expand a sidewalk, it basically is almost inevitably taking land. And if you're talking about taking land by eminent domain for a public works in a town like Cohasset, it's not cheap. And everybody wants it to be taken, but if you say, however, it's going to take, you know, we're going to take five feet of your front yard and put a sidewalk. Well, it's just in Corey, that's one thing to be aware of as you look at that. It's one of the things, the hidden things why along Jerusalem Road and Atlantic Avenue, sidewalks are so difficult to do. But anyway, that was a good point.
Who has his hand up, Jack?
Yeah.
I didn't want to interrupt moving on, but also
yeah.
I think studying, I think all this creative discussion, one of the things that was brought to my attention is you know, sometimes you can put sidewalks in very specific places, blind corners that really kind of address the problem without spending a whole lot of money. And these are the creative ideas that I think a good, well-appointed sidewalk commission can bring to us and say, well, actually, this is how we can solve it for the least, for the most effective use of dollars possible. I think that's the goal that we all have. So,
well, that's why we put you in charge of it, Corey. So you can have more fun than a grown man should be allowed to have. But anyway, thank you, Corey, for agreeing to take on that. And Jean, that was an excellent point. Thank you. Elm Street. By the way, there's been some discussion around town as to the funding. There's 500,000, and I know we did this last week, but if people at home who are watching tonight, there's $500,000 earmarked in what's called the forward bill. It is in the legislature. It's waiting to be passed. There's some political stuff like, do they want to wait till after Baker's out of office so he doesn't take credit for it, and back and forth. But there's so much in there that's probably going to go forward. It is earmarked specifically for the Elm Street intersection at Cove Road. It can't be used elsewhere. So Jean, you were shaking your head.
I don't think that's right. I followed up on that, and
you did?
what
Okay.
the legislation actually says is it's for all of Elm Street.
Elm Street.
And so we have flexibility. It's for
Oh,
all
okay.
of Elm Street. So that's positive, I think, and it's 550. Yeah.
550. Okay. So anyway, discussion on Elm Street.
If I may, yeah, I just,
Diane had her hand up first and then you, Corey.
Thank you. My question is very brief, which is, do we actually have a real status report on it, tracking the legislation? Or is it literally just kind of in wait and see mode?
Well, we don't have as much as you can track anything on Beacon Hill. The last newspaper article that I read, may or may not be accurate, ended up that there's a little bit of politicking going on, but there's too many various state reps who have money in there for their constituents. So, but
So they're going to give the credit to ultimately when they pass it, probably.
yeah.
you are so cynical, Diane. Corey.
Yeah, no, I was just gonna, I mean, Gene, probably you're looking at this already because I'm sure we're kind of on the same page here. But so basically, the original act had all this money, a lot of it got stripped out. And on yesterday, on the 11th, basically in the House, a bunch of people submitted amendments. I just do want to recognize our Joan Moschino, our rep here, that quickly filed a funding request for Parker Avenue and the Elm Street Corridor project to be back in there. So right now, basically, as you alluded to, Jack, all the things that were in there kind of got put back. And what I think what we obviously has become, and you just alluded to it, Mr. Creighton, is it is a political process. So us as a board saying, we have work that we can do in Elm Street to make it smaller, to rebuild the sidewalks, to make it safer. And this money is important. It's right by our police stations, our fire station. I think that kind of message gives Rep Moschino the ammunition that she needs to be sure we don't get dropped, right? This is going to be a fight. And I think we can say that we're ready for this money and we're ready to go and, give it to us. And I don't want us to miss out on $500,000. So.
Gene, could you compose a letter to Gene? Joan, yeah. I think you'd be the most effective.
Wait. I wasn't raising my hand to volunteer for that, but I think.
I
think there might be a preliminary step, right, in terms of, and I think a letter may not be a bad idea, but I think it should be for all of the things, not just Elm Street. I think Parker House is obviously very.
Yes, right.
On Parker Ave. That was a source of a lot of heated discussion last year, not heated, just intense. And so just to focus on Elm Street real quick, I think we need to come to terms though with the next steps, which last we left it, we were going to think about next steps in terms of scope and what we think made sense. So right now where we are in terms of funding on next steps is we do have this forward act of $550 that we can only use for Elm Street. We don't have any other money set aside or earmarked for Elm Street right now. We applied for a state grant, we didn't get that, and so the Forward Act is incorporating that grant that was not successful, and so that's where we are on the state funding side. But otherwise, there's not like a line item that passed previously at town meeting for this, for the Elm Street project, as far as I'm aware.
Corey, is your hand up from now or?
No, it's now. And I think
Okay.
that one recommendation would be, I think we've got kind of A/B track here, right? Which is if we don't get this money, then I think we have to have a conversation. If we do get the money, then we can have a different conversation.
Right.
So a part of this is, we can see what our bank account looks like and then decide how much of the apple we want to bite off. And, we may very well decide that we want to spend all the state money and not a dime of our money. And that's totally fine if we decide to do that. But we should make that call after we get the check and it clears.
Just to add, my understanding is one of the reasons we could actually refile that request was because we had been denied for a previous grant. So this is a priority that has been identified, already applied for funding, and because we didn't get that gave us the ability and the trigger to, so we're not just dropping projects in, because that's the kiss of death for projects in state grant funding of any kind, actually.
Yeah. Paul?
If we get this money, question, is there a timeline on, do we have to spend it in a certain amount of time?
I don't know.
All right.
Does anybody know
That's
the answer to
something
that?
worth finding out the reason. I don't mean to sound like a killjoy, but just being coming from a business perspective. Again, we can do all great things to Elm Street, but that road, no matter what, will not take heavy equipment going over it back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, because that's going to be the only egress when this building and this construction project starts going up. And it would be an entire waste of funds because I don't think that structure, and I have some experience with trucks and heavy equipment. You lay a new road down, you do all the improvements, you're just going to destroy it. I'm sorry?
No, sorry. No, I was agreeing with you. My mic was still on. My apologies. I was just saying, no, we don't want to do that.
But I don't mean to sound like a killjoy because Elm Street needs its attention. But that's why I was wondering if there is a timeline, if the funds are approved. Can we wait, quote unquote, minus necessary repairs until after this building is up in the harbor?
Okay, Jean, and then Corey, and then Diane.
So my thought would be, because I do think if we get the money, I think there's a few steps we need to figure out. One still remains in my mind, scope, particularly if we're looking at 550 that we get from the state, and how we're going to spend that money. So that's the first. And then timing, I think, is an important second. And I think that we need to figure out from the building inspector what the timing is on the development at the end of the harbor. If it's going to be built, for example, over this next year, and realistically, we wouldn't be paving until next summer anyway, then it may be okay. It may be fine, right? Because then we're paving after that big development happens, particularly if like most of the big heavy stuff has been brought over, right? But I think more important, I would suggest what we want to do next is my preference would be, and we haven't gotten to scope, but I think we might want to discuss it, would be to start with a phase one, which is the long stretch of Elm Street, the vast majority of what we're talking about, until we hit that triangle area. Because it strikes me, based on the estimates that we got last week, which was approximately 1.5 million to do the entire stretch plus the triangle. When you break it up into the smaller segment, I think it was like 700,000 to 800,000 for just the Elm Street stretch. We may be able to get Elm Street done, particularly if we can find a way to reduce the cost a bit on the bigger, longer street that is used by our fire and police and the majority of the residents. And so my suggestion is, let's have our town staff, Michelle, work with Mike Sardinia, who I think is a particularly talented member of the Elm Street Working Group in terms of his professional experience, to kick the tires on the cost estimate, work with Michelle to get to see if there's a way to sort of bring the price down, to see if we can get that 550 to cover as much as possible, assuming Mr. Sardinia is willing to continue generously volunteering his time for the town, working with Brian Joyce, obviously, too. So we could try to get this more shovel ready. And if there's more resources, including engineering and designing, that we think we need to do, I think then that's a decision point that we'll come to. And, we can decide, do we want to go forth, including if we don't know about the Forward Act or not. And so my suggestion is on phase one, move forward with that. And then I think we do have to address near the harbor in a phase two, but my strong preference is to wait to see what happens with the resiliency study. We just paid 200,000 to get back to see what they recommend, because again, we were hearing last Thursday that there's a whole bunch of different things we can do, for example, to Margin Street, that are simply not contemplated within the Elm Street design as or recommendation that we received. And I think that's where the money is too on the state side. It's in resiliency. So I would really prefer to have us have a plan that builds in resiliency near the harbor on that phase two area.
There's one thing that did come up. I'm sorry, Diane. I just want just a factual thing that was very interesting. That evidently the new project creates a bit of a berm effect. So as if water does in fact rise, or we have storm surge, it may hit in the new building because it's new and designed for resiliency, will be fine, but the water will go around it And I don't know, we have an answer to that question. Anyway, Diane and then Paul.
Yeah, I just wanted to, assure that when the Elm Street Corridor Committee has been meeting over the last year or so, I mean, absolutely money dictates scope and timing of all building projects dictate our priorities in town. I mean, that's, when we were talking about paving and sidewalking certain streets at our Thursday meeting, a lot of the priorities are dictated by when water and sewer projects or other infrastructure projects are in play. So absolutely. So, I think we're actually all mostly on the same page. Like however the funding is going to dictate whether we do the first section, which has to get done anyway. And then how do we approach the intersection? And I think the committee or the working group we want to make sure we address all of it to some degree. And it's it may not be practical, but I think that's why we need to just keep these conversations going. And just for clarification, Lauren Lind is the staff point person on this. And I think that one of the main reasons, in addition to her being the planning director, is because this has so much to do. And the other person has been Jason Federico and now Brian Joyce from the engineering, is that it really is dependent on, how the other work on that street rolls out, and that's the private development. So, I think we're in a good place to just keep pushing and seeing where the money lands.
Paul? You're muted, Paul.
God damn. Sorry. Anyway, I would agree with Gene that resiliency should really come first, because I was a little concerned about, and I may have taken it the wrong way, Mr. Sardina is a very talented man, about that building somewhat being used as, not used, but active buffer. And then coming back with what we have to do is move to raise Margin Street, if I'm not mistaken. So things that are really not on the menu yet. But again, it's a project that just bears watching. And then before we do spend the money, and then we just send it down set it down the proverbial hole. So I think all those ducks have got to be in a row prior to us making any decisions along those regard, like a building plan, perhaps, if we could get that.
Does anybody have, I'm sorry. Does anybody have a time frame for the resiliency study?
Maybe we could get an update from Ms. Lynn next select board meeting. She can maybe, see where we're at and give us a update on the resiliency study, but
Lauren is on the meeting, Jean, just to let you know.
Yeah, I just didn't want to catch her off guard because, I just didn't want to catch her off guard because this is not an agenda item. So I don't know if she's, ready with that information.
Good evening, everyone. Hi, I'm Lauren.
Hi, Lauren.
I'm sorry, I actually wasn't certain which resiliency study you were referring to. Are you referring to the CZM grant that was just recently applied for?
The 200,000 we devoted to ARPA funds for the resiliency.
Yes, I believe we're talking about the same program.
Right, I think so. Yes, go. Yeah, explain it to us, please.
Okay, yes. So if I am understanding correctly, we applied for that grant. We devoted some ARPA funds towards it as a match. We will find out probably, I believe, in September if we're an award of that grant. So we have a couple of months to determine that. But once we have that information, then yes, I would wholeheartedly agree that that would be very helpful towards future infrastructure planning for that entire intersection region.
Very good. Thank you. Somebody else had their hand up.
I think
Corey, your hand is still up, or?
No, it's up again. My apologies. I was just gonna, before we jump to, and Lauren, thank you very much. I was just gonna say, do we want to go back to the discussion about having a letter to Rep. Moschino regarding this section? We talked about that, and then we obviously got talking about resiliency, which is super vital. I just don't want to.
Well, I think we can. I think we've agreed to send it. I guess. I guess, Lauren, saying now you're now that we know you're here, Lauren.
I've been here since 7. I'm still here. So
you heard that part. Could you compose or have somebody compose a letter to that And then Jean and I can sign it on the behalf of the select board. And if the select board would like to vote on that letter, we can do that. Would you prefer to do that or?
For the sake of the minutes, I'll just make a motion that we ask Chris Senior and staff and Lauren, who's a great writer, to write a letter, talking about the important infrastructure projects in Cohasset relative to the Forward Act. To
So we
John
have
Stino.
we have a motion made and seconded. Is there
Second,
further discussion?
no.
Roll call vote. Paul Grady,
Already aye.
Diane, are you?
Diane Kennedy, I.
Corey,
Roy Evans, aye.
Jane,
Jean Haley Dipple.
Jack Creighton, aye. Yes, see, all done. Thank you for reminding us. We've got that down. And when Beacon Hill gets a letter signed from the Cohasset Board of the Select Board, they quiver with fear, just so we all know that. So.
Hey, Jack, sorry to interject, but Corey's right. I misspoke. I was thinking about Michelle from the cost estimating standpoint, but Lauren, you would be the next, you would be the person who should weigh in on Elm Street. And so I don't know if we need a motion, but I think if the board is amenable, I think that we should direct Mr. Senior through Lauren and Michelle if necessary to continue investigating that phase 1 stretch of Elm Street up to the Triangle to see what needs to happen and work with Mr. Sardinia in order to get a tighter bid possibly, or see if there's room for cost savings, as well as identify next resources that we might need in order to get an engineering bid. And I do think before we move into the next resources for a rail construction bid, we should take a pause and see where we are on the Forward Act. And I think we should also do some neighborhood outreach too. Both.
Are we all comfortable with that? Okay.
My reaction would be I'd rather wait on bifurcating the project until we know where forward is. I do know, and then reassess, because I don't know. I feel like that we could have a lot of discussions that may not be even important if this goes one way or the other. So I'd recommend we just wait until we hear from that.
That's fine.
Paul?
And I'd like to wait and see what we have by way of building down at the harbor before we pour good money over bad. So I just want to throw that out there. Either a building stand or anything along those lines.
Jane?
I'm fine with both of those. I just wanted us to be prepared if we did get Forward Act money to be able to maneuver on it, but I think we can do that quickly.
Yeah.
Maybe.
No, I think the recommendation of at least of the working group was to try to drive forward both conversations, recognizing that money, engineering, timing, et cetera, are gonna ultimately make the choices for us. So I agree, just keeping the conversations alive and trying to get to some different benchmarked moments in time where we can actually make some real decisions when we know more about the money.
Jane, was your hand up or?
Nope. I
No.
think maybe we should move to the next agenda item unless there's.
Okay, so my understanding is
more.
we don't need Mike Sardinia to figure that out at all, but or at least we want him to be aware that they might be bifurcated, but really not to do anything now. Is everybody comfortable with that? Okay.
Lauren has her hand up, Jack.
Lauren.
Sorry, thank you. I just wanted to confirm that I think I've heard a couple of points of information at the very least that you're looking for, and I will coordinate with the different staff members, volunteer members to at least get you that next level of information so you can do some forward planning.
Very good. Thank you. Corey, is that your thumb up or you want to speak or?
Oh, thumbs up. Sorry, my apologies.
That's all right. Okay. Communications update website. All right, our select board packet is posted on the website. Megan, are you here to give us an update?
Yes, I'm here with Justin. So I'm going to share my screen and let Justin talk to you a little bit about addressing some of the items that were talked about in a meeting in June, and I'm going to mess up the date, but it was our last update. And so we're going to talk about some of the things that were identified and what we're working on to solve those issues. Let me just, sorry, sharing my screen here. So a drum roll, this is what we're calling our dress rehearsal of our website. And so Justin's going to address some of the issues that our current website's having and how we're going to change that. And while he talks, you can take a look at our outline, and then we can discuss that a little bit further.
Good evening. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Wonderful, wonderful. Good evening, Select Board. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to present tonight. Before I start, I'd like to say a quick thank you to the many citizens who have really made me feel welcome here, whether I'm out for a run or out at the coffee shop. I enjoy speaking with you and answering many of your questions. So keep coming over to me and keep saying hi, and I really appreciate it. We understand that the board wants an updated, more functional, more comprehensive website that also has a customer relationship management platform to address resident inquiries. Before I get into some of the new hardware and CRM features that we are looking at, I'd first like to address some of the comments that were brought up during the June 21st meeting and some of the actionable steps that we are taking. The first is I will talk about deadlines, which I know are very important to the board. They're also very important to Megan and I as well. So the deadline for having the refresh website up and running is September of 2022. So very soon, in the next few months. Another thing that was brought up during the June 21st meeting was a search feature. We are going to be working on increasing keywords on pages to help with search optimization. When we talk about search features, that brings me to a really amazing piece of technology Ron Menard and the rest of the IT staff have been working tirelessly on. It is a document portal system, also known as the Laserfiche web link, that is currently located under the services tab. It's a phenomenal archive and repository. Inside of it is many different town reports, town meeting minutes, select board minutes, and other documents that can be found there. You can actually see some of the documents dating back to the late 1800s. I was recently reading some select board meeting minutes from 1882. The IT staff is working on moving the more recent reports in minutes and other information into this repository. The goal is to house everything, all agendas, meeting minutes, and other information in one. And I really want to emphasize the word one central location. And this is a work in progress, and it is being worked on constantly. The navigation is easy and seamless. We want agendas and other documents to be easily accessible. Clicking multiple times to get an agenda was something that was brought up back on June 21st. We're working through this with Civic Plus to really see if there is a better solution to the issue. But I know that in the June 21st meeting, it was brought up that it would be great to have links to important meetings and a quick ability to get the calendar where people can download agendas for upcoming meetings. As I said, that's being addressed. You'll see some of the improvements on the front page of the refreshed site, a big bold calendar with customizable buttons on the right-hand side. I want to stress that a website is fluid, meaning that it is constantly changing and being updated. Therefore, this website, this refreshed website, will continue to evolve. Another comment centered around the town's new news portal that will be accessible right on the front page of the refreshed site. Currently, it sits under the community tab on the old site. It features a sign-up form where folks can get an alert when a story or video is posted. It also works on the mobile device. This site also has a button that allows people to seamlessly access the Town of Cohasset's official website and vice versa. You'll see it on the refreshed website. You can go back and forth very, very easily. Another comment was made about having a well-designed CRM platform or customer relationship management platform. This would allow us to better understand the needs of the community open up communication, analyze and keep track of data, build relationships, and improve the community. So one of the front runners, and I'm going to ask Megan if she would stop sharing her screen real quick, and I'm going to pop up a quick presentation here that they had sent me. Give me 1 second here. Let's see, share screen. Let's see. Pop this up real quick. Can everybody see what I put up on the screen?
Yes.
Wonderful. So this application is called GoGov. This is one of the front runners. It's an all-inclusive CRM platform that also combines citizen notifications and alerts. On the CRM side, we can process service requests, reporting, and mapping. Folks can also sign up for emails. We can track citizen satisfaction, response times, and look at reports on a map. It would actually embed directly into the town's website for a seamless look and operation. There's also an app that the town can customize, and we would use that for citizen notifications and reports. We can send alerts through the app, through email, through Facebook, and through Twitter seamlessly. They can be informational messages, emergency alerts, or other real-time notifications. The company is actually working on integrating geo-mapping into the notification side of things. For instance, if we wanted to send a message to people who live on a specific road, we would be able to send that. Geo-mapping is already in use for the citizen request tool. So implementation would only take a few weeks. Price tag on that, which I know some are probably thinking, is about $11,000 a year. It includes training and support. I scroll down here. I'll show you a little bit about what the app looks like on the phone for some folks here. And then I will actually pop up a web portal. So this is the city of Cartersville, which is in Georgia. This is part of their portal here. You can see, and we can also customize this, by the way, specific to Cohasset. But you can see, for instance, it's got code enforcement, fire. If I wanted to, let's say, click on fire, I had questions for the fire chief. I would click questions for the fire chief, and that would direct me to an area where I could drag images, drop it, and I could send it directly to the fire chief. It would go right to him or her. Another option is something that I believe we have used in the past. It is a lot less robust. That is called SeeClickFix. It's a 311 citizen request and work management software. We actually have asked twice for a quote. We have not yet received a quote from them, but the best way to describe it is it's just not as robust. And so that is my part of the presentation. I'm going to ask the board if we could just hold up on questions because I know Megan is going to just kind of quickly walk us through the front page of the refurbished site.
Thank you, Justin. So I'm just going to pull up the site one more time to just go through some of the decisions that we made and why. Of course, we're open to feedback and we welcome feedback so that we can make some changes moving forward that the board finds appropriate. So what we started with was adding an additional heading line of different topics because we find that people, department heads always want to be on the front page, of course, with whatever news that they have. But we find that, as a landing space, we really want to have a lot of options for people to be able to navigate that are clear. So we did opt to add another header line. The photos that you're seeing are a product of our photo contest that we had back in the fall. These aren't necessarily the ones that we picked, and I think we'll probably rotate a lot of them, but we were lucky enough to receive a lot of fantastic photography. We're also working with Jason Conforti to take some more stock photographs of the items around town that are recognizable as well. The next section we have here, we opted to choose buttons. We just find that they're bold, they're easy. We can customize them very easily. These aren't necessarily the topics that we'll cover. We're looking at our statistics right now to see what would be most appropriate topics that get the most clicks to be in those spaces. But we're hoping that, this is where our CRM would live and that type of thing. And when we reached out to different community members and, we've talked amongst different boards, we found that everybody really would like to calendar to be a little bit more front and center, which is what we did. As Justin said, we're working with a document portal to create links so that instead of having to download all of the agendas, they will be available on second click instead of fifth click. And it'll just be once you click on a meeting, there'll be a link to the agenda. So there'll be no more downloading business unless people decide they want to go that route. And then next we would get to a section with our latest news. So we have a space for our large news story and then our smaller news stories, maybe less recent. And for transparency and, continue to allow people to understand who's who in town, which is very important. We have the select board and our town manager featured at the bottom. People will be able to click and contact as needed. And I think, at the very bottom, we have our more, direct helpful links to be able to navigate the site a little bit easier. The other thing Justin had talked about is the search feature. And so we are going back and we're working really hard to create more keywords on each one of the pages so that when the search feature will work better because there'll be more words for the system to identify when people are typing in for a search. So those are our big things, and I'd love to discuss and hear what people have to say.
Okay, very good. I have Paul,
Jean was ahead of me, Jack.
Diane.
That's okay, Paul, you can go.
No, go ahead.
Oh, I was
By
just
the way, just a cautionary note, it is 9:37. We're an hour behind and we've got a couple of things to go, which I believe I'll be able to shorten, but let's be aware, unless we'd like to be here till midnight.
No, we'll go fast, Jack, I promise you.
I think this is a great start. Some of the functionality I think we just want to keep our eye on is with the, for example, select board packet. I think it's important that it's not just in a big PDF. I think we want stuff broken out separately. And so I acknowledge that there's a lot of stuff in there, which makes it tricky. And so that's something I think we want to figure out. So that's one. And then another functionality issue, which we're about to get to, is what's called the notice and comment process. So this is a little different than a CRM, but I wonder if the CRM technology could be used for it, where maybe not. But this is a process where, for example, if we want to put out a proposed bylaw and we want to invite the public to provide us with written comments on it, do we have an easy interface for them to do that through our website and publish those comments online? Again, I don't think the tech is that hard, but I do think that, just to flag to you all, that is, I think, something that I would like to see happen with all these zoning bylaws we're putting out, going through that sort of notice and comment process. And so I think we need a website that accounts for that. And I'm happy to talk with you offline about what exactly I'm talking about.
Paul?
No, I think Corey has, go ahead. I'm just formulating a couple
Corey.
questions. Or Diane had it too.
Diane?
Yeah, just similarly, great job. Two quick things. One is, in addition to select board, I think of the hearing boards in particular, because I think that is one big use of our website, is people going and looking at their neighbors' building projects before a Concom meeting or something like that. So similarly, I would imagine those would be more downloaded than even a select board package, frankly. Keep that in mind, that I think especially with the hearing boards, those are really important to be able to get there. And then just a question on that C-click fix, Justin, I wouldn't worry too much if they don't respond, because one of the weird things that does, and I don't know if the CRM will do it this way, but I would recommend, if possible, that it does not, which is it's all location services based. So for example, if I'm driving down the road, I'm on my way to Vermont to ski for the weekend or something, and I see a big, huge pothole on Jerusalem Road, I'm in my car, I'm not gonna take a picture or do it. But, when I get up to Vermont, I might I actually tried this once. I got to Vermont, I'm relaxed. I'm like, I'm going to report that pothole. And it was located, and it kept coming up in like Quechee, Vermont. And I'm like, no. So, there's got to be a better way for that. That's not location services based. And it's just a place for people to write in their comments when they can. They don't have to be at the site of the issue.
Very good. Good point. Megan, one thing that will help you is when we ask for select board things, when we're going to be discussing something, there's a lot of information we want to make sure the public is aware of. Because if it goes to a vote, we want to know them to know what the information is and the background. And we try to do that as best we can. But that's one of the things that's important. And that has to do with notice requirements. Anyway, Paul?
Yeah, no, it's a nice presentation. Just on an aesthetic side, Justin and Megan, great pictures. I would ask, maybe just food for thought, that you take some of the, incorporate some of the old and Cohasset traditions into that webpage, the photos, maybe mixing the old with the new. Just for the fun of it, just not just slam bam. Again, food for thought. But also, if you're working with the other boards, like I find that planning board does a magnificent job of putting up their agenda and putting up their pages and what's going on with their meetings. They just do a hell of a job. Lauren does a fantastic bit of work. Is use some of her expertise because she's been great. And accessing our agenda, and those are my things.
So I believe that they use the document portal, which is what Justin and I are looking into. So they're the trailblazers with that, but I agree with you, and we're trying to implement the same.
Okay. So I am trying to move this along, but I think it's an excellent job. It's a tremendous improvement. So I thank both of you for all the work that you've done. And I think the select board is behind you 100%. Are there any more comments on this? Okay, so I'd like to move.
One briefly.
Yep.
My name is misspelled on that page.
Sorry, Corey.
That's okay. I'm fine with it. I'll throw it out there.
All right. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Right, sure. Right. So anyway, never mind. Anyway, moving on. Okay, look, I'm looking what we have coming up. A remote voting at town meeting, next steps. I'm going to have Tom Baker, who spearheaded that, look into that and come back to us later. License and permits, Historic Society one-day entertainment and clam bake. Does anybody have any objections to granting that license?
I'll make a motion to pass it.
You had a motion to grant the Historic Society a one-day entertainment clam bake for 9/10/2022. Is it seconded?
Second.
All right, is there any further discussion? Roll call vote. Jean?
Aye.
Paul?
Paul Grady, aye.
Corey?
Corey Evans, aye with Jack. I liked how you rephrased that. That was well done.
Oh, yeah.
Diane Kennedy,
Aye.
aye.
Okay, Jack Creighton, aye. Motion passes. Change of manager, Split Rock Social. I assume, Wes, are you from Split Rock?
That's me.
Explain what you're going to be doing. Either one of you, who is?
Oh, yeah. So Wes is going to be the new general manager, and he is going to be running the full operations on site, and kind of replacing me on paper for that spot that I was holding as a GM.
Okay, so you were the previous?
Yes.
Okay. Wes, can you give us a very brief overview of your experience? I assume you have all the tips, training and all that stuff.
I sure do. I mean, I've been in the industry for, close to 30 years now. And I've worked on the South Shore for almost that entire time. I've, run multiple restaurants successfully without any incidents, and I'm well versed and ready to make Split Rock successful.
Now we've got all the stuff from the police department, et cetera, and so on. Does anybody on the select board have opinions on this, thoughts? Diane, and you're muted, Diane. There we go.
Yep, thank you. Hi, Aaron and Wes. One question I have is if you have a sense of when you might open, and then only because there's always somebody on the select board that says this to the proposed manager, just in terms of being familiar with Cohasset specific liquor regulations. And a little aside on that, Chris, I think it would be great. It's been at least 6 years, I think, before since the select board has had a liquor licensing training with ABCC. So when are you opening? And Wes, have you had a chance to familiarize yourself specifically with Cohasset's liquor regulations?
Yeah, I'll take the first bit of that as when are you opening? That is the question. So we are targeting mid-September at this point, with the potential for kind of a more simplified version of our business model to be open in August. And that's actually we're going through town hall right now just to kind of figure out what that would look like. We're waiting on our container bar. It's being fabricated down in Atlanta, and they've run into a myriad of issues just with the supply chain. I think they've hit like every single problem that you could possibly think of, as far as supply chain issues go. So we are on track though. We're getting pictures regularly, and hopeful for mid-September delivery of that thing. And as soon as it's there, we're gonna be up and running as soon as we can.
Okay.
And as far as the second part of that question, no, I have not familiarized myself with anything Cohasset specific. I can certainly do that as early as tomorrow to sort of get the ball rolling there.
Great, thanks. I think it's pretty pro forma, but there's different things about when you close and how many hours after and that kind of thing. And most importantly, to be in communication with our police department.
Yep.
Which is kind of standard operating procedure, I imagine.
Yep.
So thank you, good luck.
Very good pickup, Diane. And Wes, when you've done that, could you just send an affidavit to Chief Quigley confirming that you've read the Cohasset liquor regulations?
Absolutely.
All right, thank you. Jane?
I think Corey has his hand up, and then I'm prepared to make a motion.
Yeah, my only question was, and Wes, just a little bit of backstory. I'm pretty sure you probably heard this, but this is kind of the second or third go around of this concept in this space. And I think, I can speak for my social group. We're very excited for this space, but we also want to see it succeed and succeed in the right way. So just encouraging you to, we've got neighborhoods in the area, and we want to be sure that this is a gem of the community, and we're looking to you to kind of make that happen. So welcome, and hopefully this is everything that we're looking forward to it to be.
Yeah, no, thank you for saying so. Thank you for the welcome. And just to reassure everyone here that's listening, I mean, I've spent, like I said, well over half my life in this industry and working in some very community-centric, family-friendly restaurants for the bulk of that time too. I'm very well aware of sort of the balancing out of, people that want to have a good time, but also be respectful of sort of the community at large. It's something that I take very seriously, and I will, be paying attention to every single day. So.
Ocean.
Jane?
I grew up with Wes, and I would highly recommend him. He's done an awesome job holding down Stars, which if anyone knows Stars, hold down Stars, you can probably do anything. So I would move to
no more need be said.
move to approve Wes Balzer as the new manager for Split Rock Social.
Seconded.
We have a motion made and seconded to approve Wes Balzer as manager for Split Rock Social. Is there any further discussion? Hearing no further discussion, I call the vote. Jean,
Hi, Jean Haley Dipple.
Corey,
Corey Evans, aye.
Paul,
Already aye.
Diane,
Diane Kennedy, I.
Jack Creighton, aye. Motion carries. Congratulations, Wes, and thank you, Aaron. We wish you the best of luck.
Thank you.
Good luck.
All
Thanks,
right.
guys.
Thank
Bye.
you. Safe Harbor International. Somebody from Safe Harbor.
I'll get the committee application here if I can just.
Could you read it? Because my,
Yeah, this is something that I believe Safe Harbor does every year. It's the International Overdose Awareness Day. It's going to be an event held on Wednesday, 8/31, August 31st, between 6:45 p.m. and 7:45 p.m. on the town common. If there's no other comments on this, then I would move to approve the event permit.
I'd second it.
okay, we have a motion made and seconded to approve the Safe Harbor International event. Is there any further discussion? Hearing no further discussion, I call the vote. Jean,
Jean Haley Dipple.
Corey,
Evans, aye.
Paul,
Already aye.
Diane,
Diane Kennedy, I.
Jack Creighton, aye. Motion carries. Okay, zoning bylaw working group. Tom, are you still here? Okay, Tom Callahan. Okay, a little background, and we're gonna move this along. The zoning bylaw has been around for a while. It devolved out of the Master Plan Implementation Committee. And we are just basically updating the charge a little bit. We're eliminating the requirement, the restrictions on the membership. And it is because it is a select board committee. We have the ability, and we've checked with town council, we can change it anytime we want, any way we want. There isn't any bylaw approval changes that we have to go through. And we've already identified this as one of our priorities. The same work that they've been doing for a year and a half, they're continuing. We are having them, we have been providing them, the town council has been providing a lot of expertise, and that enabled them to move forward without having to hire a outside consultant, which when that went out to bid, we didn't get a lot of response, and we got really no meaningful response. What we need to be done in our small town, we can do locally. Tom has written a lot of regulations before. He's done a lot of work. We have people who are on that. We have 2 local attorneys who are experienced who've also agreed to go on that. That information, I believe, has been posted, and we did notify, I think Jean looked at it in June, that we let everybody in the community know we are moving forward on this. They have a major meeting tomorrow. And so we're not really proposing anything radical. There's no major change, and their charge is a little different. It's a little simplified. Do you have that charge, Jean? Because my computer froze. I'm having to the website. All right, good.
Yeah, so maybe just a tiny bit more background.
Yeah.
Maybe it makes sense, Jack, to do charge, appointments, and then council. And then I
Yes.
think on the more substantive issues relating to zoning bylaws, I think we probably need more time on that at another meeting, given the time.
Right.
So So the charge, these proposed revisions, which I worked on, and we also asked Mr. Callahan, who's the chair of the planning board and is also on the zoning bylaw working group. This was designed to try to respond to the need for more flexibility and support on zoning, including having them just have a direct conduit to the select board, to have the back and forth rather than going through the MPIC, the Master Plan Implementation Committee. That said, they still will reach out to the MPIC, but really wanted to show the committee support directly through the select board. A few highlights: increasing the membership to 7 people to allow to recruit more members to help with what's a very, very heavy lift on the zoning bylaw work. Allowing the members to be really from anywhere, but taking in recommendations from our planning and zoning boards, which they do anyway. But, you know, there was some concern that if, for example, we weren't able to find someone, we want the flexibility to be able to find someone who happens to be, you know, a talented individual that's just not on the ZBA or planning board. And then the other revisions go to interfacing with the various boards, a little more interaction there. So that way we can all make sure we're on the same page. And also provide that the town has that we help facilitate notice and comment on proposed bylaws as well, which is important. And then confirming that the committee is going to be doing the recommendations to implement the zoning bylaws to the applicable committees, including our board. So that's sort of where we are. Again, it's just tailored to try to make things a little more flexible, help on the communication front, help with a more direct line and back and forth with the select board to support them better.
Right. Diane and then Corey, or Corey and
I have a couple of kind of Scribner questions, pretty minor actually on the charge. I think it's great. The second bullet under zoning bylaw committee is hereby formed and directed to. Could you just explain, and it's probably, I just don't know the lingo, where it says discuss and establish build out end objective. Is that the same as a build out analysis, or I just want to get that clarified?
I'm not sure that language, that was the existing language. So you're asking about what the existing language meant. I don't think there was a change there, Diane. That does.
Okay, but what does it mean?
Yeah, it would mean a build out analysis, and
okay.
There have been some done in the past by MAPC, and that's probably something we would, as a town, sub out to MAPC again.
Okay. So basically, they both mean the same thing: build out end objective and build out analysis. A very, very minor picayune thing, which is the committee membership shall be comprised of 7 Cohasset. It should say citizens and not residents, as much as I would love to have residents impacted. And then the integration of fiscal impacts. And I think we talked about this, I think it was in the original charge, but is that something honestly that this group should be dealing with, or is that something that staff and or advisory or some other entity should be actually looking at that?
I can address that. Having been on this is to do zoning. And when you're doing zoning, you're determining what can be put in something. And so it is important for the neighborhood to know what the impact is. It's not like the fiscal impact for the whole town's budget. This is just as, so they're not empowered to do the whole budget. It's just that. And Tom?
Yeah, Diane, what I think this addresses is that, and I brought this up in zoning working group meetings all the time. If we're doing zoning and looking at what the future growth of the town is going to be and a build out analysis, we do have to just make the town aware that, we become a population. We just recently passed 8,000. What if we become 9,000? What does that do for the services we have to provide? I think to this point, we would only be alerting the town to these potential impacts of population growth and build out analysis, we wouldn't be getting into making recommendations or, you know, anything like that. But I think it's just obvious that if the population changes, the services we provide, particularly our standalone school system, is going to be impacted. And we have to remember that those changes will all come. They're not just zoning changes, but they can have other implications.
Thank you, Tom. That was very clear. You all set, Diane? For now? Because oops, you, Corey and Diane. Oh, you're okay. Corey?
Yeah, no, the question was on the change of the seats. We just have, say, 7 Cohasset residents, and I know before there was a lot of care given to carving out, you know, the open space or planning. You know, we had affordable housing, so we just wanted to hear a little bit of the. If we prefer the flexibility of not having these seats be reserved for certain board members, if the plan is to still have planning and select board on it, I'm just, Tom.
Oh, yeah.
What I'm saying.
Yeah, I mean, when we had the resignations that we had recently, believe me, I reached out to open space, reached out to zoning, which were the other 2 boards. Master plan had 2 representatives. We have 1 remaining. Planning had 2, we have 2. One of them is new because one of our people didn't run for re-election. I reached out to the other 2 boards and there wasn't any interest amongst them, and that's fine. And it's just, you know, everybody who's serving on multiple boards gets strained to a certain point, you know, how much workload they can take on. So, you know, and I think it would be beneficial that, you know, these 3 seats all be filled by citizens at large, just to get a broader perspective than the inside baseball of people on the boards. You know, people on the boards know what issues we're facing because we see permits and applications and what's going on, but it's also good to have a perspective outside of that as well. So.
And just a follow up from you, Tom, you said you're supposed to meet tomorrow. Is that true?
No. The planning board's meeting tomorrow.
Planning, okay. My apologies, I misheard.
No, this committee will be meeting again the 20th.
Okay, so we have to do some appointments because right now you don't even have.
Yeah, you know, we had a meeting last week with the 4 of us who survived, and, you know, it was more of orientation, how to go forward, the timeline going forward. Yes, there is a homework assignment for the July 20 meeting. And then, you know, after that, after July 20, we're looking at August 8th to being the first public forum.
Gotcha.
So yeah, it would be.
Yeah,
very,
if I can.
very helpful if we had 7 members as soon as possible.
Yeah. And, you know, Corey, to answer your question, that a lot of it was some difficulty. The select board still appoints them. And of course, we're aware of the, I've agreed to continue on as a select board representative. Tom, could you tell us who the other 3 are? And by the way, yep.
Before we go on to appointments, can we just finish out on the charge? And
Oh, yeah, well, that's fine.
Yeah, let me just say, I see that a lot of my changes to the charge were incorporated, and I want to thank you. I appreciate that, Gene. So.
Okay. Paul?
No, I want to follow Gene's. We'll move on with it. I was just more as on a public service announcements to get these boards more attractive, because you're doing a hell of a job, and what we can do to get it out there. That's all. But we can talk about that later on.
So to Gene's point, is the board satisfied with this charge?
Hey, Jack, if I'm,
And then Diane. Gene?
I was just going to make a motion that would incorporate Diane's change plus 1 other nit that I found. And then we can move on to the next, but if Diane has something, I don't want to intervene.
The only other thing that is a nit is where it says target objective is to present changes at the fall 22, I would say, and or spring 2023 town meeting, just so that there's no.
Okay.
You know, it's more clear that way.
No, that's the target based on previous comments you've made about splitting this up. So.
Right.
Okay. Thank you, Tom.
So I would move, Jack, to adopt the amendments such that it's a new zoning bylaw committee charge based on what's in our packet. but with 3 specific changes. In the first bullet, thank you, Corey, instead of zoning bylaw working group, that should be fixed to committee. Then Diane's change of residents to citizens, and then the change Diane just talked about to and/or the fall of 2022 and spring of 2023. So that's changed the zoning bylaw working group to zoning bylaw committee, change residents to citizens, thank you, Corey, and then add after fall of 2022 and a /or.
And one more, it's not a change, it's just a consideration, which is the 1-year appointment what you're looking for? Because normally our committees are 3 years. Working groups are usually a very different kind of beast, because it's usually projects that are,
Well-
at the staff level, so.
You know what, Diane, I think that'll be fine in this case, because if we keep to the schedule, by spring 23 town meeting, we're going to know where we stand on a lot of things and how much change has been made and how much has not been made. So
Right.
we could be done, or we could be retooling. I think the 1 year from today is fine for now.
Okay, thank you, Tom.
I'll second Jean's motion.
All right, we have a motion made and seconded to approve the zoning new charge. Is there further discussion? Hearing no discussion, I call the vote. Corey Evans,
Corey Evans, aye.
Jean,
Jean Haley Dippledy.
Paul,
Paul Grady, aye.
Diane,
Diane Kennedy, aye.
Jack Creighton, aye. This is formally adopted. The new appointments, well, Tom, give us, who's on it right now?
Okay, so right now there's yourself as the representative from the select board under the former charge. There's myself as one of the 2 planning board representatives under the former charge. And under the former charge, we appointed Clark Brewer as our second representative when I said our second representative did not run for re-election. So it's myself, Clark Brewer, yourself, and then the 4th member is Cassie Malatesta, who was one of the 2 representatives of the Master Plan Implementation Committee. And in turn, I understand she was a citizen at large appointment to that committee. So I would ask that the 4 of us continue on for the sake of the continuity. And, and particularly in the case of Cassie, she has done yeoman's work on research for us. So
Okay, thank you, Tom.
And that gives you a quorum, yep.
Right. The other thing is David Farag, who's an attorney in state government. He's would like volunteered to go on. Dave McMorris, who's also an attorney and very experienced and on the planning board, they have agreed to go on.
He was the zoning board, former zoning board.
Zoning board. What I would suggest is that we first consider whether we want to continue on or reappoint the existing 3 and then consider the other 2. So the chair would, if the board chooses, would entertain a motion for the 4 original members. Is there discussion on that matter before we have a motion? Diane and Paul.
No, I was going to make a motion. I see this as a reappointment, basically. It's a new committee, so people are going to have to get sworn in before meeting, but I would like to move that Jack Creighton is Tom Callahan, Clark Brewer, and Cassie Malatesta are appointed to the zoning bylaw committee.
Second.
We have a motion made and seconded. Is there further discussion? Hearing no further discussion, roll call vote. Paul, do you have discussion?
Yeah, no, I had something to ask about that for the motion.
Okay.
Tom, the rest I agree with. Now, we have some changes coming up in the zoning, and I know there's some differences on some of the board members about that. Now, would you take some recommendations about maybe another planning board member or something like that? I mean, you're running the committee, so.
Well,
I would defer to you, but I would ask that you weigh that situation because there are some potentials coming up that may not help the board in its cause or the group in its cause.
what are you asking, to have 3 planning board members on it?
I would see at least one, maybe one taken off.
Well,
Again, I would defer to that.
All right.
I'm
You know,
asking.
we are, all right, so.
Let
we
me
can-
say this about, that. I don't want to, first of all, the planning board shouldn't have a quorum on another committee, and that creates all kinds of scheduling and open meeting law stuff. Second, I can assure you, Paul, that I am satisfied with the membership we have amongst the 4. I know Dave McMorris and Dave Farag as well. I think they'll work well with the committee. I'm very comfortable with the makeup we have now and the ability to go forward, so.
Then I would defer you and I would go with the motion then.
Okay. Diane Kennedy.
Corey has his hand up. I don't know if that's for the purpose
Oh.
of discussion.
I'm sorry, I've lost where we are. I was also gonna say.
We are discussing the motion to appoint the 4 existing people.
Okay, let's do a roll call, then come back to me, please. Yep.
Right, yeah, that's right. So you're aye,
Sorry, Corey Evans, aye, sure.
Jane,
Ely Dipple Dye.
Paul's aye, Diane's aye, Jack Creighton. no.
I need to say it. I have to vote. Diane
Oh, I
Kennedy,
thought
aye.
you were. I'm
I made the
sorry.
motion. I didn't vote.
All right, well.
Same
of
with Paul.
course.
True, Jack. I'll say aye too.
All right, okay.
Thanks, Diane. I need
You
to
know,
make-
everything's going back and forth. I have all these little screens up here and hands raising. So anyway, that's good. All right, now we have the 2 others, and they their information's been on OneDrive for a while. And you know, David Farag, and I mean, he's an attorney for the State Department of Conservation. He was chair of Concom for years, vice chair, and then chair, and then served as a member. You know, Dave McMorris, whatever, I mean, Tom, do you want to speak to either of them? And I see your hand, Paul, and then
Yeah.
Corey.
I've known both of them for years, both in town and professionally outside of town. And I think, like I said earlier, they'll be more than capable of doing this, and will be a welcome addition.
Okay. Corey?
I'm just
And
looking through
then-
the application. I don't think the application's made it to at least me. I don't know if the whole board. I've got a bunch of applications, but I don't have anything for this group. So are you okay, Tom, if we continue those applications just for the next meeting? Because I don't think that'll delay you, because it looks like we're doing them Tuesday.
Well, I'll say this, Corey, that, you know, for the July 20 meeting, there are 2 substantive matters that I want the committee to do. Their homework assignments is to look at one of the new articles of the bylaw, as well as, you know, look over and critique. We're going to discuss the slideshow presentation for the public forum. I'd really like them to have the opportunity to have more than a night to do that. If you don't appoint them till your next meeting, next week, they'll have one night to look at it. And I'd rather you just do it. Like I said, I'm comfortable with these appointments. I know both of these gentlemen, and I think they'll be fine. You know, and you know, at your next meeting, there's still a 7th member, and you know, there's going to be no avoiding doing that at the last minute. But I prefer people to jump in sooner rather than later.
I mean, you
Well-
could probably still send the stuff to them. Just since generally we don't do applications without having the stuff available. And I'm also happy to serve as the 7th if you want.
I'll defer to you guys on how do you do it, but yes, I will assume at the moment that Dave and Dave are on, and I'll send them all the materials for the next meeting.
I believe, and we've been trying to do that. We've been trying to get a list of all the people who've filled out various forms and submitted to be consideration. And we had some glitches trying to retrieve it from the town archives. But anyway, Paul's been patiently waiting with his hand up.
I would be comfortable in moving ahead and moving the vote on this because, and that may not get taken up, but I would be comfortable doing that. I trust Tom. I trust these two gentlemen. I think we have a board going forward and I think they need to see the information. And we don't have a bunch of people running for the boards or the committees, I'm sorry.
They are in the database of applicants for boards and committees. They were not put on this, but anyway, Diane, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm not comfortable. I mean, this is one of the things that we get accused of all the time is trying to stack committees with the people that we know. And in this kind of committee, I totally appreciate both Dave's experiences and I would be happy to approve them, but I need to see an application. We just literally, think about it this way, we literally just formed this committee technically. So I'm not comfortable making any appointments other than what I see as reappointments. I'm happy to take it up so that Tom can have a fully, sworn in committee ready to roll on the 20th, but I can't vote affirmatively for applications I don't have.
Again, there's nothing that stops me from sharing the information with them informally. I just take this opportunity.
All right, Tom. Okay, Tom, thank you.
No, but I take an opportunity about member number 7. I just, the public who might be interested in that last seat, I just want people to be aware that we have a very intense and aggressive schedule in order to comply with the 2 town meetings. So between now and next May, it is a very big time. It's a time commitment and there's going to be a lot of materials to read and understand.
Okay. Jean, your thoughts on this? I'm just eliciting, I'm just trying to make sure everybody speaks. I
recall Mr. McMorris from my time on the planning board. I've spoken with Mr. Frog, who's reached out and had a much more extensive conversation and enlightening discussion than any application would give me. So I'm perfectly fine moving forward on those 2 appointments because I feel I have sufficient information about both of these individuals. And it's not like I have another application to compare their application against either. I mean, we're dealing with uncontested seats that we're struggling to fill. And so I would move to appoint David Farag and David McMorris.
And I would second it.
The zoning bylaw committee.
All right. We have a motion made and seconded for discussion. Before the motion was made, I did want to weigh in. I think both of them are extraordinarily qualified. They should be on there. However, I would really kind of defer to, Diane, and I think we should consider that the way in which we decide these things, we should have a consistent way that we do make sure was on there. And we could make the argument that information on both Mr. Farag and Mr. McMorris are already in the town archives. But I think it's a little unclear. So, I would suggest that we really should defer it and nothing against them. I'm strongly in favor of them. And I think we all know we're going to vote, or we all apparently may vote for them. But I think we need to be mindful of the process. So in the discussion period, I would probably indicate that if it comes to vote, that I think we just, Jean, if you might consider.
You asked me to withdraw my motion.
Well,
yeah.
I withdraw my motion.
I was going to make a motion just to table, but okay.
That's all right.
Motion to table.
Yeah. All right. So, and by the way, I think this is a way where we see a board's really working together. We recognize very highly qualified people, and we recognize the importance of process. So I'm very proud of this select board. I think we, And thank you, Diane. And you have,
I'm
you know,
gonna add more to it.
got that compliment. You ought to just move it right along.
No, I'm sorry, but we had a motion and a second. So either Jean
been
withdraws
withdrawn.
that. If we have
I
a
withdrew
motion
it.
to table, then we need to second that. So she's withdrawn her motion. We don't need the motion seconded on the tabling.
No, we don't. No, I'm not asking it to be tabled. It's moot. Okay, so we do thank Mr. Frog and Mr. McMorris, and if they think they've gotten out of being on this committee, they're wrong. Okay. Now, KP Law has been providing a lot of help. Now, we have been, and I believe it's within our power, you know, just as using the use of counsel, which, by the way, council reports to the select board. And I want the board to be aware that we have been using them to do this work. I don't know if we want to separately retain them. That would require an RFQ as opposed to just utilizing legal services. But Jean, I saw your hand up. How would we, what's your
I
thought?
just have a quick suggestion. So we devoted $75,000, if I recall, in ARPA funds for a zoning consultant. We never hired because we didn't like any of those applications. I think maybe we could move to reallocate those funds to KP, who's already under contract, to add in the scope of work, and then we can just move forward and allow Tom and his working group to consult with KP, you know, knowing that we've allocated that additional money.
Okay. Comments from the board?
If we're allowed to, I mean, reallocate, it's not really reallocation because we're using it for the prescribed goal. I mean, if that's, if Chris and what's left of our town finance thinks that's okay, that seems to make a lot of sense. I mean, we're hiring a consultant that just also happen to be counsel. Great.
Yeah.
Diane?
I think if we affirmatively reallocated, it would have to be on the agenda as such. So I think, Chris,
Well,
if we can
have
just
it. We
use that
have-
money for the same purpose, but just a different, you know, outfit, then we
We
don't
do
need to
have
take
it.
action.
Diane, we do have it retain KP Law for code updates.
That's different than reallocating funds, if we
Okay.
needed to actually reallocate funds.
Well, do we need to reallocate funds, Chris? It seems like to Diane's, maybe Corey made the point, if we already allocated 75,000 for a zoning consultant, the zoning consultant happens to be KP Law, or can we just direct you to?
If it covers the scope, yeah, right. Then we should be
Use
okay.
those
Do we-
funds
Chris
for-
is reading. You can see his eyes.
I thought, there's Tom fell away. So I have been speaking with Carolyn about this too. The retainer agreement does have a provision in there for retaining them for other services like this. That said, I had asked Carolyn for some kind of scope, so there was some kind of, you know, it's not just an hourly billable thing. And I know she said something to Tom, like a sketched out thing. So I think it would be helpful, if not tonight, maybe at the next meeting, the board approve a kind of a plan, a project plan for this, so that, you know, KP knows what's going on. At the same time, this is part of the zoning study. It's part of the work. I don't think it necessarily has to be repurposed. I mean, the legal part was always part of the analysis, so I think it's okay. I will just double check with Don to make sure that he feels the same, but I think it's okay because it was originally part of the study anyway.
Yeah, and we never hired a zoning consultant, so we have 75,000, which is plenty of money, I think, to help get Tom and KP started, and then maybe we can check in quickly on the Tom front with respect to any change of scope.
And as the hiring authority for town council, who's already been hired, we can direct them to provide legal services. But I think if we want to take that 75,000 and apply it to that, we should at least flesh it out and find out what they're capable with. So for now, I don't think we have to take any action on this unless some people feel that, but I think the reason this is on the agenda is so I wanted the select board to be aware that, and formally say, yes, we agree with this, but we'll have a definitive way for our next meeting. So Chris, make sure that's on our agenda if you don't mind. Okay, board committee interviews and appointments. The only thing that's really burning is the CPC appointment, which I think we've done all the background work on that. Am I correct? On CPC?
Question.
I'm
Is it-
asking,
Is it the select board position? Because the three
No.
citizens at large are all have 3-year terms. I think they still have 2 more years. Unless somebody resigned that I don't know about.
I believe there's a vacancy on there. That was the information that was given to me. Chris?
So the planning board seat is vacant and the planning board has yet to nominate someone unless Tom has somebody tonight. There's also, and Tracy can go through, we went through this earlier, the select board reset the seats a year ago because to make it so that over time there'd be an at-large seat every year, because right now they're all in one clump. So this year, the select board seat is up for a 2-year appointment, the open space seat and the conservation seat. And then you have to fill the 2 years remaining on the planning board seat. Those are the ones that are up now. I don't think there's been any recommendation from open space or conservation yet, or planning for that matter. You can do the select board seat tonight if you want.
Is that the member of the select board?
Correct. There's a member of the select board on CPC.
Right. Paul?
I'm under the impression, I thought, Chris, that you could have up to 9 members on CPC.
There are 9 members, Paul. And it's 3 up every year. And what was happening is that the at-large citizen members, the way it was set up 20 years ago, they all were in the same class. So they all 3 seats come up every year, every 3 years. The select board reset the terms so that by the next appointment cycle next year, there'll be the seats will be staggered 1 year, 2 year, 3 year, and then go to 3, so that every year there'll be an open seat for a regular citizen at large, not just committee seats. This is fixing something that was set wrong 20 years ago. So
Right, because what was happening, Paul, was crazy that no citizen position would open up because people would just stay there and then the committees had their appointments. So the idea was to reset that so it would open up opportunities for citizens.
Okay, so the question I'm looking at, as we all look at our watches and see it's 10:30. On the committee interview appointments, some of them are kind of like the election workers. And we've all seen that. It's all on the packet. Are there ones on there that we are comfortable just to kind of reappointments to make?
Might I make a recommendation? I think we really should do the election workers, because I know that the town clerk's done a lot of work, and all those are her. It kind of went through the process already. Everything else, maybe we hold off on until to the next meeting, just so we can kind of get through. I think we got some stuff to figure out. Does that make sense?
With the exception, maybe the AEC, because I think they have some timeline issues and they need appointments for their.
But I think we've got 3 for AEC with only 2 seats. So I do think we have to do some sort of triage on that and invite people in. So, because I was thinking the same thing and then I realized I counted.
Oh, I didn't realize that. Okay, yeah.
I'm gonna suggest even being more expeditious, because the committee appointments that we got in our packet, I believe all of those are reappointments. And there are no other, correct me if I'm wrong, there are no other candidates seeking positions on those committees. So that's the Board of Registrars, Fence Viewer, Social Recycling, Cohasset Harbor Committee, which is the Yacht and Sailing Club position, Election Workers, Historical Commission, MAPC, Norfolk County Advisory, Town Hall Building and Zoning Board. Like, we could literally do the slate, although there are 2 holes in this couple of the select board positions.
I would put a pin in Harbor Committee, because I think there was we need to reconcile. There was an issue with someone being appointed who.
From one of the committees.
from one of the,
One of the
like,
yacht clubs. Or-
yeah, I think we need to hold on that, and figure out how to resolve that.
So
Okay.
can I make a motion to move the electors at least? Is that okay with everybody?
Yeah,
Well,
second.
we can do that. That's made and seconded. There's a further discussion.
Thank you to everyone that works our elections. That's the only thing. Thank you
Right.
to all those people. Yeah.
So motion made and seconded to reappoint the election workers. Roll
And
call vote.
to appoint all the election workers as noted in
As
the
noted.
packet, because there is one new
Noted.
applicant, but yeah.
Jean,
Aye, Jean Haley Dippledy.
Corey,
Troy Evans, aye.
Paul, Diane,
Diane Kennedy, I.
Jack Creighton, aye. Passes. Now, to your point, Diane, the reappointments. Do you want to read off the ones that are reappointments and we'll vote on it? Or you want to make a motion or you just want to
Yeah,
wait? till later?
I'd be happy to make a motion because I actually
for
think,
it.
again, there's no other applications for these seats and their reappointments. So for the Board of Registrars, David Frog and Trace Dorso. Fence viewer, David Frog, Trace Dorso for 3-year terms. Fence viewer, Glenn Pratt, Annette Sawchuck, each for 1-year terms. The Historical Commission, Jackie Dormitzer, 3-year term, Megan Elder, 3-year term, and Jill Crafts to fill an unexpired 1-year term. Why don't I just leave it at that?
All right, we've had a second, we've had a motion made and seconded to reappoint the aforementioned officials. Is there any discussion? Hearing no further discussion, all those, roll call vote. Jean,
Jean Haley Dippledy.
Paul,
Aye.
Diane,
Diane Kennedy, I.
Corey,
Troy Evans, aye.
Jack Creighton, aye. Okay,
And-
we will
and then-
table go ahead, Diane. I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
no, I mean, the one thing I was gonna say is it takes a while for the letters to go out and people to get sworn in. So to the extent that people are comfortable, I would also recommend that we appoint the Town Hall Building Committee, Mark Cameron, Carolyn Coffey, Phil Lear, Gerhard Lubitz, Tucker Meehan, Wayne Sawchuck, and Josiah Stevenson for 1-year term, and the Zoning Board of Appeals, Charles Higginson, 3-year term, full member, Mike Dickey, 3-year term, associate member, and Matthew Watkins, 3-year term, associate member.
Second,
Motion made and seconded to reappoint the aforementioned officials. Is there any further discussion?
Amendment, can I add Tanya Waddell for reappointment to AEC, just to get her reaffirmed?
Yes, do you want to incorporate that?
Sure, it's the same number of votes either way, so, yeah.
second.
Second, well, we have an amendment to amend it, made and seconded.
Now we vote on the amended motion.
Yeah, okay. Jean, I'm sorry,
Jean Haley Dippledy.
Paul,
Aye.
Corey,
Aye.
Diane.
Clarification, are we voting on the amendment?
We're
Yes.
voting on the amendment, then we'll vote on the amendment, on the amended motion.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'm gonna say no, only because it's not on the agenda.
Didn't notice that. I was rushing. I appreciate that.
Sorry,
No,
No.
gonna pass anyway.
yeah, that's fine.
It's not on the agenda, we can't vote on it. The motion's out of order. Move on,
Chair declares, move on.
move on. Thank you, Diane, that was a
To the
good.
main motion.
Main motion, thank you.
All
Which
right,
has a second.
Diane, you're just, all right,
Sorry,
Dean,
I know. It's a good thing we're not in person. People be throwing things at me. I get it.
That was a good catch.
it's all right. We'll be here till 1:30. It's okay, Diane, we don't hold it against
I
you.
need my dinner.
I haven't had mine. Jean,
Jean Haley Dippledy.
Paul, Corey,
Troy Evans, aye.
Paul,
Aye.
Diane,
Diane Kennedy, I.
Jack Creighton, aye. Moving on, all right, discussion of electronic minutes. I've asked Corey if he wouldn't mind, because I've championed this for a while, and then Corey brought it up, I think, 2 weeks ago. Corey, would you mind fleshing out how that would look? an electronic, an electronic minutes.
Yeah, no, you sent me the email this afternoon. I mean, I haven't done any type of work on this, or I mean, I think we've just casually talked about it. I did say in my reply, just to say, I think I want to be sure that what we do doesn't necessarily put us in violation of another statute. Like if we're going to do something, I want to be sure we do it right. So
Well,
I was just going to
that's why
suggest.
I have to look into it. Because we have to figure out what we can do and we do it right. And we don't know the answer and we research.
Yeah, I'm not equipped to handle that task myself, unfortunately. So happy to work with whoever else or Chris Senior or whatever.
I'm happy to help.
Okay, great.
Fine. So do you want to work with Diane and we will also instruct KP Law to provide some background?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think getting town council, just getting some basic recommendations on best practice would be great.
Yeah,
Yeah. All right. Thank you.
Yeah. So Diane, and you'll work with Corey on that?
Yep.
Okay, very good. Now, I just wanted to get that moving. Okay. Approval of minutes of 5:10, 10:20, 5:10, 5:24, 6:6, and 6:7, 2022.
So moved.
Second.
We've had the approval of the minutes, aforementioned minutes been made and seconded. Is there any discussion? Hearing no further discussion, I call the vote. Jean,
Jean Haley Dippledy.
Corey,
Corey Evans, aye.
Paul,
Aye.
Diane,
Diane Kennedy, aye.
Jack Creighton, aye. They're approved. Town manager update. Chris, don't feel obligated to speak it.
Due to the lateness of the hour, I'm going to pass.
Okay. Select board comments. Anybody have a burning desire to? Okay. My only comment is I am just very pleased at the quality of the discussion and the back and forth of all of the select board members. It's just very good. I think we're making progress. And I love the way in which people bring up very good points and other people reflect on those points. And we see changes and evolution. This is how a select board should ask. And I think the town should be very proud of this select board.
Can I make a shout out quickly for Alternative Energy Committee? They were in front of us a few weeks ago with the electric bus. I think they've gone through their RFP. I think we're going to award it. And just huge thank you to town staff, school committee, everyone in that committee. We're going to get a bus that's below what it costs us for diesel bus. That's not polluting our kids and our air. And I know it was a big lift, and it's a lot of lift for one bus, but just congratulations, guys. I think what you all did was awesome. So thank you.
Very good. All right. Anybody else wish to speak? Jean?
I did want to thank our Cohasset Fire Department who did respond to that fire in Hingham. That was a huge, big, bad fire. And, you know, I'm grateful that no one was hurt. And I just think that, you know, when we can support our neighbors, we absolutely can and should do so. I know it's part of our mutual aid, but this just shows the benefit of having these mutual aid agreements and working perhaps on a more regional basis with some of our communities. And so that was great.
Anybody else?
Good.
There are no topics not reasonably anticipated within 48 hours. Unless Corey's hand is in the air.
I'm just waiting for you to call for it. Just waiting.
Oh, okay, go for it, Corey.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion to adjourn made and second. Is further discussion? Hearing no further discussion. Roll call vote. Jean?
Jean Haley Dippledy.
Paul?
Aye.
Diane?
Diane Kennedy, aye.
Corey?
Corey Evans, aye.
Jack Creighton? Aye. Oh, details. Well, thank you all. Thank you all. 10:39. We're doing well. Thank you all and enjoy the rest of the week, and we'll see you shortly.